Good evening, Holliston, and welcome to a very special two-day before Thanksgiving meeting of the Holliston School Committee. We're all ecstatic to be here. We'll get right into things. We'll first we'll call the meeting to order, and I'll take an entertaining motion to approve the consent agenda. The only thing I'm actually going to do we have the minutes in our drive?
We do.
Yeah, they got in there a little
Okay, has anyone?
later.
Does anyone want to delay them until?
Read them? I read them.
All right, so I'll first entertain a motion to amend to remove the minutes, and we'll just approve the warrants.
Moved by Dawn.
Second by Sarah.
Okay, all those in favor? Okay, now I'll take a motion to approve the consent agenda and the warrants.
Moved by Dawn.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you. All right, so just for those in the audience and on Zoom, what we're going to do tonight is we have a presentation from the principals. They will give that presentation and anything else from the administration that they have to discuss about their thoughts, and then we will get to public comment before the committee begins, our discussions and deliberations. Does that work? For those on Zoom, when we get to public comment, if you could just raise your hand. Because we do have a fairly large number of people for public comment, I am going to hold it to a strict 3 minutes. It's supposed to be 2, so it's 50% more. But please do keep your comments within 3 minutes. There will be ample other opportunities before this is all said and done to let us know your thoughts. And with that, we'll turn it over to our principals and other administrators.
Thank you. Thanks for coming tonight. And they're going to do a brief presentation, and as Mr. Alfred had said, they will then take questions about the presentation.
So first off, we want to kind of get how we got here this week. We came up, Jamie and I, initial concerns with the support of Karen and David, our students riding the buses, specifically Placentino students with middle school and Miller students with high school. And that's where we started last meeting. And then from there, there was conversation regarding combining the elementary schools, and that's where we're going to go. We first wanted to make sure that we acknowledge the hard work the committee did to put forth the work that they did. This in no way is trying to undermine any of the work that was done. This is, us trying to come up with a different solution that we feel is in the best interest of our students. So what our recommendations are Placentino and Miller elementary schools have the same start and aligned start and end times. Our recommendation is the elementary schools are assigned the earlier start time. Secondary schools continue to have the aligned start and end times, and secondary schools assigned the later start time. Next slide. Our guiding priorities are looking at the developmental needs of all of our students, the implications for high school after-school activities, sleep studies for elementary and secondary students, and streamline the busing operations.
So when we think about combining K to 5, we wanted to look at the benefits of students, of staff, and for families. So when we think of the benefits for students of being K to 5, we look at that we could create a greater sense of community for our students. There could be more opportunities for cross-grade activities, more predictable routines. A kindergartner could have a consistent schedule for 6 years prior to moving on to middle school. And we know that all students, especially our younger students, thrive on structure, especially those who are neurodiverse and or have anxiety. And then finally, those collaborative activities, we could have cross-school events, group projects, teamworks, etc. Next slide, please. Thank you. So we also want to think about how we could really empower our Miller students to be role models. I think the Miller staff does a really nice job with their student leadership team as fifth graders, and we think this is another opportunity for them to be able to be peer mentors and leaders to the Placentino peers. And we could even look at some whole complex initiatives like buddy reading or peer tutoring to foster those leadership skills. When we think of benefits to staff, something that we've really been a stumbling block for us is looking at professional development and how we have such like professional development needs, K to 5, and often our differing schedules really interfere with that. So we could have coordinated training opportunities. We now would have the same time for curriculum meetings after school and staff meetings, so that could help for that. This would be an opportunity that some teachers could do peer observations across grade levels, especially in that transition from second to third grade. And this is an opportunity just to have more grade level and vertical alignment with curriculum. And finally, some of the benefits that we felt that our K through 5 families, so these would be families with students with more than one student within this grade level, it would be easier to manage transportation, those extracurricular activities after school. We find at Placentino we have many students dismissed early when the Miller student is dismissed because they're driving their Miller student to an activity and they won't be back in time to get their Placentino student. So we're hoping that would decrease that as well. At home, it would synchronize some of that consistent meal and sleep schedules and streamline that ever so important. Can you go to the next slide? Sorry. That morning routine, hopefully reducing some of the chaos and stress. Next slide, please.
There were some perceived challenges that we wouldn't be able to combine the two schools. Will the UA and the lunch schedule be possible? With the additional 15 minutes, it does allow us to keep our current model, 50-minute UA, and the cafeteria is big enough, whether we have the whole, like Miller all go like we're doing this year and we did last year. All of Miller goes for the first hour and a half, and then for the last hour and 15, the Placentino students do. Can we change that? Absolutely, but we know we can get the students through the lunch at both buildings.
And then finally, it was wondering how would arrival and dismissal work. I think we mentioned last time that from COVID, we were forced to learn how to do things more efficiently, and that helped us lean on technology a bit to help with our arrival and dismissal. And then finally, I mentioned decreasing enrollment. Do you mind clicking on that hyperlink? So if you can see, this is our enrollment for FY 2017 and our predicted enrollment for next year, which is FY 26. And it's a decrease of enrollment of 202 students about. So over the past 9 to 10 years, we've had a significant decrease in enrollment, which means less cars and less bodies to be able to move through our complex.
So how would this look? Nope, next slide.
There we go.
Next slide. The buses would drop off in the morning in the center loop between the two schools. If needed be, we could drop off in the Placentino loop as well, but we do think that we would be able to get all of the drop-off just based on the timing of when the buses come through, all through the center loop. The cars, we would start a line. Right now, the preschool does it. They go between the two schools, and during COVID, we needed to use that as a line too. And we would have parents access through Linden Street and come through that way. lining up the cars. We would not have parents on Woodland Street. We would strictly use Woodland Street for entrance to the facility for buses and staff. And we would use Woodland Street making a right-hand turn for cars that are exiting. This is kind of oh, next slide, please, sorry.
There we go.
There we go. So as you can see, the yellow are the buses, and they would either use the center loop or the Placentino loop. Again, we do think that we could just use the center loop, and you can see how the cars are coming between the buildings, and they would exit through the Woodland Street, and we would have the students drop off there. If you go to the next slide, there's an option B. Option B is having, if you look, we'd first let all the buses drop off, but we would then potentially access the front of the Placentino School as a drop-off, so making a left-hand turn there where the kindergarten entrance is, and having them go all the way around to the stop sign, and students could get out on the curb and go to their respective locations. Again, exiting onto Woodland Street and making a right-hand turn there.
And these aren't in any particular order. They're just two options that we think are doable, and we'd have to look at logistics to see which one would work.
Next slide, please. For dismissal, both loops would be used for buses lined up by bus number. The Placentino kindergartners would go out first. They actually get out of school earlier than the rest of the school. So we would get the Placentino kindergartners on the buses. And then we would dismiss our grades 1 and 2 and 3 and 5. Students start to get into a routine knowing where their bus is. If the bus is numbered and in the same spot, and if we are the first run, all of those buses should be there. So students and grown-ups being outside, we can get all of the students on the buses. Car pickup, we would not, again, we would queue the cars through Linden Street, but we would not allow the parents on until all the buses had exited. And hopefully by that time, we will have the Woodland Street Bridge open and the buses can go in either direction. We are still, even if the Linden Street or the Woodland Bridge is out, we still want parents to exit to the right so that we can keep things moving safely. If you look at the next slide. You can see in yellow all of the buses lined up. We get the kids on the buses, they exit, and then we would have the parents, like they would in the morning, we would electronically, we type the parent's name in, we have kids lined up ready to go outside, we line them up, they get in their parent's car. If we can go to the next slide. If need be, we could also access the center loop after the buses left if we feel like we need to get more flow moving in a different manner. But either way, I think we'd have to see how that's gonna go. But we do think both of those options would work. I was able to speak with Chief Cassidy on Friday, our emergency management director for the district, and he has approved both our arrival and dismissal options.
So what does the research say about start times? We've talked a lot about our older kids needing more of a delayed sleep phase. The research also says that our younger students have an earlier circadian rhythm. So what does that mean? So an earlier start time for our younger students, research says that it results in improved learning. They have sustained attention. It also allows for more outdoor time after school. We see this with our little ones now. If you walked into a classroom around 3, they're like, having a little bit of trouble sustaining their attention compared to first thing in the morning. Or the opposite, a later start time for our adolescents results in enhanced academic performance, improved mental health, reduced health risks, and there was studies about increased safety for student drivers, that they're more alert.
So we also tied in our secondary recommendations to this presentation. We are hoping that you'll consider the start and end times. They're consistent with the sleep studies, and it does align the end of the day with our Tri-Valley times to allow for after-school activities, particularly athletics. And it would keep the middle and high school students where they are currently, and that is riding with each other at these times. Next slide, please.
That's fine. So what you can see here is these are the start times for the Tri-Valley League for the 25-26 school year. In order for us to be able to ensure that our freshman teams, our JV teams, and our varsity teams can all play, we really need to be within those same time frames. As you can see there, the latest end times are going to be Dover Sherborne and Medfield at 3:10. Once we get beyond that time, then we really struggle to make sure that we have access to for our teams to be able to travel and play, and then you have to start talking about whether or not you're going to have a freshman team have access to games and a JV team have access to games. That's it. Okay. Additionally within that is that we have to think about our after-school clubs and activities, those who have jobs, play rehearsals, musical rehearsals, and all of those. So really to be aligned within these times is incredibly important for the high school. And just piggybacking on what Karen said about, our kids, right now it works having the middle school and high school together on the buses. It's something that the kids are used to, that we know is something that's going well, and so don't see a need to change that. But as I said, it's going to be really important for us in order to, when we talk about the social emotional wellness of our teens, a lot of them, they hold on to that time really tightly after school and what they're involved in, and I wouldn't want to see any of our students lose access to that. And so to stay, ideally, as close to what we have as we can, but really making sure that we're within times that are consistent with the Tri-Valley.
We want to get to public comment, but I guess, can we get into some, do you have a proposed schedule? Because you're saying this aligns us with the Tri-Valley, but we don't have anything to look at.
If it aligns us with the Tri-Valley, is it your position that this high school should get out no later than 3:10?
No, that's what I was saying, is that
So
like
they
three,
have to
that,
start. So does that mean an 8:22 start time? Is that what you're advocating for with the high school?
I don't know what I'm just giving the end time.
So is that correct, that it's an 8:22 start time and a 3:10 end time to align with the Tri-Valley?
Or somewhere in the nature of that.
I'm saying that 8:10 is I'm saying 3:10 is like the.
Wouldn't want it later than.
I think they have the
Right,
times.
but I want the specifics of what time we would start, because that impacts the start time.
That's what they're, yeah.
Okay,
So-
perfect, that's what we're looking for.
I would start throwing out times. So,
You have to sort of frame this a little bit, and then
Sure.
maybe we can get to public comment, but I just want to kind of know what the what the,
Is it possible to make that bigger?
Well, then you can't see the,
So-
just put this part up.
If you go down, you go 100% down to...
Right,
Well,
they want it
it's a
bigger.
screen, so I just want to explain to you way it's structured, so you first have it. I built this model. So what the top section where it says assumptions, we can pick the start of the, again, this is built around the elementary going first. So the elementary start time, a certain amount of time before the start of the elementary day to try to arrive, based around breakfast, a run time between the runs, and then times between the high school and middle school at the end of the day. So that's, again, these are all variables that will adjust the time below. So this way Susan can just go to those times there, and I'll adjust them as you see that. What we did is we put together the model based around a 7:30 start of the elementary day, and let the math feed itself there, so.
So you can change it if you want to show different times, but, so do you want to walk through?
Again, the plan would be to target for Miller and Placentino to arrive at 7:15, based on this plan. With the start of the school day of 7:30, with a length of the day of 6:38, 6 hours and 38 minutes at Miller and 6 hours and 35 minutes at Placentino. The end of the day would be 2:08 and 2:05 for Miller and Placentino, with a bus depart time of 2:13. I hit it right first time, 2:13. Again, knowing that it's going to take some time for the children to get on the bus. Then running this through a 40-minute basic run time. Go to the high school ends. So with the high school and Adams starting at 8:15 and 8:10, so we drop off the high school first because they have the longer day, and to try to, again, get them out earlier just because of athletics, or get them out at a more consistent time. That would feed Adams at 8:15, high school at 8:10, 6:38 and 6:48 for their start times, leading to 2:53 and 2:58. This only allows for a 40-minute run time in the afternoons. We're going a little longer than that right now, so again, we're hoping to be able to tighten certain things up with stops, but right now, these are the times that we would recommend moving forward with.
But I believe when I looked at it today, Keith, that there's only a 35-minute time
Right.
between the high school and the Placentino. And granted, they're late to Placentino, but this is actually 5 minutes more.
Yep.
And with the hope that, depending on what time we started, and with the Woodland,
Yep, I mean, the hope is that we can make this time, so.
So this is 40-minute run time.
This is a 40-minute afternoon run time.
Okay. What's
It's
the
a
run time in the morning?
55-minute,
55.
because of traffic, and obviously picking up is longer with kids to get them onto the bus than getting them off.
but to do that, you're dropping kids off 15 minutes earlier.
we do that after work
Which is
already.
our
Right now, the
plan
kids are dropped off at 7:10.
They start coming at 7:10.
I've got probably 8 out of the 12 buses there by 7:10, and they're leaving me by 7:15 now.
That's historical with the middle school when it's at 7:30.
As I said last week, that there are really 4 times we're talking about, right? There are really 4 important, well, I guess now 5, but there, with bus drop-off, but there's the first bus pickup, and then there's the last bus drop-off in the afternoon, too. So under this proposal, when would the first pickup be?
That's over there.
Fairly similar to where we are now.
Okay.
I mean, we're talking about them getting there possibly 5 minutes later, so it could be could be 5 minutes later, but obviously these buses are going to be more full. I took all the kids this weekend and squeezed them all into the 11 buses we have at Placentino just to get the routes kind of started before being able to build it. Now, granted, I have 111 kids on one bus, but it tells me, before everybody gets all upset, that tells me that I need 2 buses to do that run. So I was able to build it that way, and I have 5 buses that are beyond capacity. So again, I would need at least 5 more than the 11, and I would guess probably 6 just to make it work more efficiently.
Yeah,
So
and the other piece that we talked about.
So how many buses are we talking about?
I think it's 17. 17 at the elementary would be my recommendation, and 15 at the high school, middle school, which is where we are now, since it's the same cohort that we've had for a while.
And the other piece with the afternoon is with the afternoon times, with the middle and high school getting out before Placentino now, that was delaying the buses even longer, Placentino, and those are our slowest kids to get on the buses too. They need more support, so that made them even later getting home versus if it's a few minutes late getting to middle or high school, those kids can get on the buses a lot quicker and get out of the campus a lot quicker.
So Dr. Kessler, as you and your team built this recommendation, how did you think about the commitments that the committee made to the community when we went through the override process, and how that factored in to this recommendation?
Yeah, I'll let Keith speak because he's the one that proposed what the bus schedule might look like next year as far as costs.
Again, we just wanted to build a model that we can start with that was similar to where we are now. If it's in the committee's interest to move it by a certain number of minutes, that would, if you move the first one by a certain number of minutes, you can move the last one by that same number of minutes. Again, we're going to try as we build the routes to create efficiencies with regards to the number of stops we have and the length of the routes, to hopefully cut down the travel time in the morning, which would then help us move that even further. We don't have to pick times now. We have to pick a model now to build from. So again, the specific times, we're going to put together what we want it to be. If you set a hard and fast that the first school has to start at 7:35 or 7:40, we can build it that way. But again, we just picked a time at this point where we are now and where there's a comfort level and something to build from.
Understood, but if we did during the override say that we were going to start, the first start time would be later than 7:30, which it currently is now, and now we're doubling up on the number of young kids, or at least in the recommendation, that go at that time. If we were to move this back 15 minutes, you get to a high school end time of around 3:15, which would be the latest in the Tri-Valley.
If you move it back 15 minutes.
If you moved everything back 15 minutes, you'd go from a 2:58 to 3:13.
Yeah.
Which would make us the latest.
Are we distinguishable from Medway and Dover-Sherburne that have 3:10 end times where they have their facilities in terms of they might have 2 turf fields or many more fields in terms of practice
Do
schedules?
you know that, Ms. Willis? I really don't know their structures.
I mean, Medway does.
I was going to say, Medway does. The rest of us in the Tri-Valley
No, I know.
have what Medway has. So.
But may I ask a question on, I think it's slide 13? Oh, no, dismissal, so slide, very similar. 15, in terms of routes, can you fit 17 buses in what you've sketched out? Do we know how many buses can be fit in that loop?
Yeah.
Definitely.
How many do we fit now in that
Right
loop?
now, we have 12 in the Miller Loop. I can probably physically get 15 to 16 buses in that loop. That's why we put the picture that shows both Miller and Placentino loops for them loading at the end of the day, plus to put them in number and where the kids go, it kind of spreads them out and allows the kids to get to those buses that everybody's not in the same location. You're actually spreading it out a little
We
bit.
would use both loops for dismissal.
And I think the leadership team is trying to address many factors, the sleep studies and how that affects students, less disruptions to students by keeping the high school and middle school together, also trying to address the after-school extracurricular and sports and not get them out too late. Breakfast is now part of our day, and also this will give an opportunity for the elementary kids to get there early enough to get their breakfast. So, I mean, there's so many different pieces to this, and also keep within a model of 2 bus runs and trying to avoid additional costs that weren't communicated.
I mean, if we were able to get everybody there at 7:15 for buses, I mean, it may be the opinion, and I don't know this, we haven't had this discussion, that maybe 10 minutes is enough for busing as opposed to 15. I mean, there's pieces of it. The DESI recommendation is allowing for 15 minutes, but it doesn't mean that we have to necessarily allocate 15 minutes towards it. So, I mean, there's ways of tweaking this down. The model was built with just showing an example of what it would be. Frank's heard this enough for me to choke a horse, but it's about structure for us. It's which 2 schools are going together and which one's going first and which one's going second.
Okay, that was the first part of my question on that slide.
Do you want to go back to the slides?
If we have,
Can I ask you folks to speak up a little bit?
Oh, sure.
You as well.
Absolutely.
We can't even see that. So if we could enlarge that, that would be super.
Plenty of room around here, too, if you want to sneak around.
No, just please speak up, we're good.
In terms of
Okay, well-
dismissal, are staff locked in until the 15 minutes it takes for the kids to load on those buses? And
No, they would
and
actually
they'd be able to exit? Okay.
During that time.
Yeah.
while
Okay,
they're
so the
loading.
buses are not blocking the exit?
Nope. Nope.
To fit 17 in there, you don't block. And then my other question is, it would look like we would have at least 300, perhaps as many as 350 kids that don't take the bus. Now, obviously, some will go to extended day, and those are based on your numbers of projecting 1,114 in elementary next year, although this year would be 1,155. So if there's 814 on the bus, and 1,114 total, you have at least 300 kids that don't take the bus.
Yep.
Some go to extended day, some are walkers. Is it fair to say there's at least 150 to 200 getting picked up?
Right now, I currently, on a max day, is about 40 cars and could have siblings. I think we in Placentino might have 40 cars. I think we're going to duplicate siblings in some of those cars. So I think you're looking at like 70 cars, possibly?
60.
Maybe 60, between 60 and 80, 80 being the max, based on what we have right now.
Okay, and those cars will come in through Linden?
Yep.
Sneak behind Adams?
Yep.
Through the, by the preschool drop-off?
Yes.
And they're just, are they going to wait there until the buses?
They will wait there till the buses leave.
So right now, they do that anyways. So right now, we have all our buses, all our cars kind of sneak in, and we kind of snake them through Miller, and we stage them, and they wait
Right.
until all our buses go. We don't start loading cars till all the buses are gone. So it'd be a similar piece.
So you can fit 70 cars there?
Yes. Yeah.
So how we do it now would block cars, but we're looking at a totally different model for the parents coming in so that it doesn't block anybody who would need to exit.
No, she's asking if there'd be enough space for the cars to
Yep.
fit. Yes.
Yep,
Flying
nope,
around the
nope.
back.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
It's actually something we learned from COVID as far as the middle school, as far as the dismissal at the middle school, as far as our ability to load roughly around 100 cars in for dismissal at the middle school during COVID.
But a little different, because we have kids in 5-point
Yeah,
cars.
absolutely.
Families that
Yeah.
have to match up. and-
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm trying to think, Jamie, do you remember what your highest cars?
Highest was-
135 was it one time? Or 125, I think it was.
Oh, I don't remember.
It was a large
No one
number
was riding the
during COVID.
bus.
That
It was incredibly
significant.
Will we have the staff to organize like anywhere from 70 to 150 kids on the sidewalk to
Yeah,
load
so
them?
what we now is we'll double our staff that we use now.
Okay.
So we'll have staff we'll be able to use staff from both Miller and Placentino.
Will you have everyone come to the cafeteria and leave
To enter, you mean?
Or to exit.
for exit? I guess where do you put all the kids?
Oh, for car pickup, you
bringing-
mean?
Yes, for car
Cafeteria.
pickup. Okay.
So what we do is we have a system where it's all electronic now. We have a person who writes down their names, and then we stage them in the cafeteria in sets of 10. So we're able to like just move them out as the cars come up. We get the kids out. Our staff is incredible.
Walk down the hallway to
They
the,
wouldn't walk down the hallway. They would walk out of the cafeteria right to the curb.
okay, so they're gonna, okay.
So
Not the main Placentino door? They're coming out the cafeteria door.
if we use the Placentino loop in this one, do you see where they would walk out the cafeteria? They walk now from buses from there. They would just walk up.
Okay.
And then in the other model, they'd exit right out the cafeteria door. If you go to option B,
Okay. I see. Thank you.
they would just exit the same way they are now.
All right, so at this time, we'll go to public comment on this, and then we'll get back to discussion, debate, deliberation. You will have plenty of time for questions.
No, it's okay.
But if you want to go sit in the audience, that's fine, too. We'll limit you to 3 minutes. And here, I'll just write your name down. It's fine.
Okay.
Okay, so
There's Zoom option?
we'll get to them at the end. So Autumn? How you doing? And again, we're going to stick. Just come up to this microphone right here.
And do you want us to stay here, or
Please.
do you want us to go over here?
Or he said,
No.
please.
You're good. You're good. Who's going to keep time?
I can do it.
Okay. So we are, just given that we have a lot of people, probably about 10 people, we're going to stick to 3 minutes.
Do you want a warning when you have like 30 seconds, or you want me to just tell you 3 minutes?
I'll take a warning.
Okay.
So 30 seconds, I'll kind of put up a hand.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Autumn Smith. I'm a junior at Holliston High School, and I'm also the class president of the junior class. And I'm speaking on behalf of a group of students at the high school. We're talking about the shift in start times for the end times, I should say, for the high school. And we're really against the later time that had been suggested. I saw in the thing around 3:43. We really do not want that. The 3:10 time also, I mean, with the extra time added to our schedule that I know that's going to be added, I know it's difficult to keep with our 2:42 time, but we prefer that we can get out as early as we can, just because there's a couple of key points. The high schoolers have a lot of responsibilities after school, starting with sports and then work. I know a lot of people, their work times start at like 3:30. They have to be there, and if we're getting out at 3:43, a lot of students have to quit their after-school jobs, or even 3:10. I know people who have to be there at 3:10, and already now with the traffic in the parking lot, they're not able to make it. So the starting times. And a lot of people need jobs because personally, like me, like I pay for my own gas, and just as you're growing up, you become independent and you need to spend a lot more things that your parents stop paying for. All the love. Moving on to sports games and practices. Personally, for me, I'm a member of the varsity volleyball team, and our practice ends at 5:30 and it starts at 3:30. And just at the end of practice, I have to take down nets, and just talking and driving, I end up getting home at 6, and at that time, I haven't done any of my homework because beforehand, from that 2:42 to the 3:30 time, I was getting ready for practice and finishing up with other teachers that I need to talk to and setting up. And by the time I get home, I need to shower, eat, and still do homework. I take APs, all honors, and I just have a huge homework load. I find a lot of the time I'm ending my schoolwork like around 11:30, like 12, and then that's even just without having any time to myself to decompress. And I feel like by the time I'm going to bed, I feel stressed and I'm not getting everything that I need to. Also, with the late bus and clubs, I know people that are getting home at 4:45 with the late bus, and I have multiple friends, one specifically that has to walk 0.9 miles from her late bus, and if we move it back to the 3:43 time, the bus will probably be getting there at 5:45, and she'll be having to walk in the dark. Overall, I'm just saying that us high school students, we have a lot to do and responsibilities as we are the older kids, and pushing back our times, we already feel like we don't have enough time to get stuff done. So, yeah.
All right, Jess?
Hello. I just wanted to thank the school committee for giving Dr. Slaney and Mr. Keim an opportunity to present an alternative to the recommendations that were presented by the school start time subcommittee. I've been closely following the meetings over the last month, and I was extremely disappointed with the final recommendation. As a mother of a rising third grader and 2 rising kindergartners, I have major concerns about their safety and emotional well-being if these recommendations were to take effect, for all the same reasons Dr. Slaney outlined at your last meeting. I also want to mention some other feedback I've heard from parents within the community that supports a Placentino-Miller pairing. In addition to the safety of our students, a Placentino-Miller pairing would give families consistency in their schedules. This particular age group cannot be left home alone, and the disparity in the start and end times proves challenging for families, especially for working parents. Additionally, pairing Placentino with Miller and Adams with the high school will keep our children on consistent schedules. The recommendations from the subcommittee requires our children to adjust their circadian rhythms every 3 years, with Placentino and Adams sharing a similar start time and Miller and the high school on a similar schedule. I believe keeping our children on a consistent schedule will not just benefit them and their families, but will also keep their academic performance high, which benefits the entire community. Lastly, I want to thank Dr. Slaney and Mr. Keim for putting together the presentation today. Your concerns echoed mine and many other parents within the community, and I'm very appreciative that you are working hard to find a safer solution for our children. Thank you.
Michelle?
Back. Here I go again. Michelle Hastings. Thank you. Thank you all. Truly thank you. After watching the school committee meeting from November 14th and from listening here no, I'll take that part back. After watching the school committee meeting from November 14th, I was honestly at a loss for words. It was frustrating and disheartening to be asked to make what felt like an impossible decision, one that none of us felt truly comfortable with, and only to find out later we didn't have all the necessary information. When Dr. Slaney and Mr. Keim spoke, it felt like everyone finally understood what we had been dealing with. None of the options we were given were good options. We were told that starting Miller and Placentino at the same time wasn't possible for various reasons. Looking back, I believe excluding the principals from the committee may have been a mistake. Their input would have provided valuable insight and could have helped us better navigate these challenges. I truly believe that aligning the start times for these two schools makes the most sense and would be in the best interest of students, staff, and families. The committee worked hard with the information we had, but none of the combinations felt right, whether it was grouping Placentino with Rams or the high school, or Miller with the high school or Rams. Every option seemed to create new challenges, and yet we were tasked with making a recommendation while trying to prioritize later start times for our oldest students. I'm grateful that aligning Miller and Placentino is now being considered. However, I can't help but feel frustrated knowing how much time and effort we dedicated to the process, only to have new information come to light after the committee was disbanded. If we had known earlier that this was an option, we could have made a more thoughtful and informed decision. Please don't mistake my frustration. I truly appreciate the possibility of aligning Placentino and Miller's start times is now on the table. I truly understand how complex these decisions are, but I believe it's critical to reflect on the process so we can improve it moving forward. Decisions like these deserve as much input, collaboration, and information as possible to ensure we are truly serving the best interest of our students, staff, and families. I'm here on behalf of teachers and parents who participated in this committee and for anyone in the future who volunteers their time to better our schools. This was a very frustrating experience. I lost a lot of sleep based on this committee. I know that people in the community were frustrated with what we presented, and I'm so grateful that this is a possibility. Truly, this is what I feel like is right. It's what should happen. But I cannot express my frustration enough. But I'm going to get up and leave and say thank you, and I hopefully won't be back to a school committee meeting anytime soon.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. Before we do go on, though, because that is something that I've heard, and I can certainly appreciate and understand the frustration. I was just wondering if Mr. Keim and Dr. Slaney wanted to sort of speak to it a little bit, because I think there's this perception that this was always sort of an option, and that it was sort of being hidden and waiting to sort of set the committee up or something like that. And
I don't think that.
Okay.
I'm not saying that wasn't what I meant to say there, that this was a hidden thing, and I hope that didn't come out as that. That is not what I meant to say at all. I'm sorry, I know I'm going over on time, but that's wasn't my intention.
Because I think it was more that there was work being done, but for 5 years plus it had been not an option, right? And as things sort of were being looked at, as things had changed, it became more potential, but there were still hoops that needed to be walked through, and just the timing didn't line up properly to bring it to the advisory committee. Is that sort of a fair statement? And the last thing we wanted to do was put out sort of false hope about something being possible that had been not possible, and now maybe was possible, to only say, nope, actually, never mind, it's not possible.
So can I just say, and so we started talking, the principals and I and Dr. Jordan, behind the scenes, they started thinking, if that's going to be an option that comes forward, we have to see if there's any other better solutions on the table. And then they realize that that 15 extra minutes now also frees up their schedule. I mean, that's a big part of it too. So it's the logistics, the lowered enrollment, but that 15 minutes also allows us to share staff differently, which we couldn't do before. So it was like the perfect storm coming together in a better way, that we do believe that this is the most viable option.
I would also add from the committee that that was heard within the group of interest of being able to try to do that. It wasn't a possibility as far as our ability to do that, but that great interest, things that our ability to kind of move things as far as through conversation with the principals, looking at actual logistics, brought that interest to the principals to figure out if there was some possible way to make that possible. But as Mr. Alford said, we wouldn't want to bring that to the committee to then take it out, to then have it, not even be a reality. So we were just trying to operate within reality as much as we could.
Being on the committee as well, I mean, that came up multiple times. Right? We talked about doing elementaries first.
Came up right before we voted.
Yeah, well,
Before we voted, somebody asked.
we talked about it. It was, I think, the one mistake we made as a committee is we should have brought more people into the conversation than we did. There were folks on the committee that said, second that got blurted out, that's not possible. Cafeteria can't fit everyone. We don't have support, et cetera, et cetera. So the no's came very quickly about the caution of this. But I think what we learned from it, to Dr. George's point, is, well, what has changed, right? And I think that's what came out of this. So it wasn't anything. We had to come up with a decision. The best decision we came up with was what we had to what we know. I do think exploring this option was a natural progression of what we talked about. I think it's important, too, outside of the recommendations of the groupings from the subcommittee, looking at kind of the constraints, or not even constraints, but recommendations we put forth, and does this solve those? Because I don't want to negate the work the committee did. Being individual on it as well, like, it wasn't a waste of time. It was actually opened up the discussion how complex this is.
Yeah. So appreciate your frustration, but know that maybe it actually led to where we are today. Okay, James.
Hi, James Caldwell. I'm a junior at Holliston High School, and I'm also here to speak about the dismissal times, the later dismissal times, and I'm one of the many who work after school, very soon after school, and if these times that were suggested, 3:10, 3:15, were to be enacted, I would very likely have to quit my job, along with many other people. And, it's kind of funny, all throughout school, we're always told, your voice matters, your opinion matters, and yet, in this really big decision of changing schedules, we have no voice in it. The students have no voice. And so if I could suggest something, like, go around and collect data, like, what do the students think? What do people think? You could go into any classroom tomorrow morning and ask, would you rather be dismissed at 3:10, 3:15, 3:45, or earlier than that? I guarantee you almost every student in the room would agree that they would want to be earlier. I would too. I'm not a morning person. I would rather wake up earlier and get dismissed sooner. So that's all I have to say. Just maybe put out some kind of survey, collect some data, and see what people have to say. I feel like that kind of information would really help with this decision.
Thank you.
Lizzie?
Hello. Hello, my name is Elizabeth Roth, and I'm a junior attending Holliston High School. Some of us have been informed of the proposal of a later start time, and I'd like to share how this will affect your students, your staff, and everyone else involved. For me, I drive to Franklin after school to attend my extracurricular activities, many of which start promptly at 3:30. With a later start time, my access to these classes are limited, but this goes beyond me. As students, it extends our hours here. For athletes involved in the school's athletics, it affects their schedule and our school's ability to engage with other schools. As an employee, it interferes with the ability to take on weekday shifts. Your employees, our teachers, will be impacted, whether that be due to paternal duties, second jobs, or simply because they have a life outside of these walls. As students, we are encouraged to participate in extracurricular activities, do our homework, and take care of our mental health, but the action to push back our start time impacts our ability to do any of these things. Therefore, this later start time cannot be enacted as it will have an immensely negative impact on our community. Thank you.
Suzanne?
Me? Oh,
Didn't you?
well, do I have to go there? Yeah. So,
You don't have to, but then you can't speak.
here. Hi, my name is Suzanne Edelman. I drive Bus 4. I am a proud member of a team of people that have driven buses for Holliston for a long, long time. This is an extremely dedicated, talented, trained group of people, and whatever you need to do, probably they'll do it. We'll do it. The problem is you need more people. So the reason why I'm sitting here is I am saying to the school committee and to everybody in Holliston, we need more people to step up and learn how to drive school buses and do this job. I personally started when my kids were little. This is the perfect job for parents in this town. Short commute, home by 9 a.m., all day long to do stuff. We've had wonderful years where we drove ski club and all sorts of things. We were here for our kids, and we stay here. And it's very, very important looking forward that we find people within this community to do this job. Don't look outside the community for people who are going to get a CDL and they're going to split to go work for Amazon because they don't want to deal with the kids, because that's what happens. You want people within the community. You want to build a strong group of people to get this job done. So that's mostly what I want to say to you, is people within Holliston need to step up. You got to step up, and you got to do the job too. And I think that's about it, but I hope to see that happen.
Did you want to speak?
Yeah, I have an issue.
Okay,
Up there is the problem.
sure. Yeah. Yeah.
First, I want to thank Dr. Slaney and Mr. Keim for bringing up the possibility of Miller and Placentino together. I should probably introduce myself. I'm Melissa Doucette, 768 Winter Street. I've got 4 kids in the school system. 2 are in 5th grade, 1 is in 4th grade, and 1 is in 7th grade. I think I got that right. It depends on the day. Anyway, So I really like the recommendation of keeping Placentino and, or getting Placentino and Miller together on the same schedule. I think that just works best for all the reasons they said. One thing I want to mention is I saw a continued start time of 7:30, and what I want to, what I think what we need to have on that sheet when you're looking at the data is that means the bus is coming to my house to pick up my kids between 6:30 and 6:45 in the morning. I wake up around 5:45, should probably be earlier. I'm not a morning person. Luckily, my work is flexible. But I'm waking them up at 6. I'm getting them up, trying to get them fed, out the door. Thankfully, there's some school breakfast now, so if they don't eat, I'm like, you just grab something at school. But it's a hectic morning, and I really want to try to see if we can figure out a way to get them not starting at 7:30 so that they're not out in the dark and in the early morning, because I do understand that, well, I think mine are tending more towards that later time now, even with my Miller kids. But I'm having to wake them up. It's hard to wake them up. It's the cajoling. They're a little bit more higher needs. They are not functioning and able to do it themselves. And
I would just want to make sure that we're, like when we did vote for the override, and Dan had said that a few times, is that we were going to try to get the start times later. And I just think that early of a start time is a little bit too much when you factor in the times we're waiting out at the bus. And then I do know a lot of parents, because of how early the buses come, they drop off. And so there's probably more drop-offs in the morning than there would be if we were able to facilitate a little bit later of a start time. So I'd like to see something that is able to even push it 15, 20 minutes, something like that. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. And thank you for all your work at redressing this and bringing it back up again. And I thank you for the communication. And I feel like I've been informed and understand when things are happening, so I can be involved if I want to be. So thank you.
Sure.
Hello, my name's Claire, and I'm a junior here at the high school. And I noticed, I wasn't going to speak before, but I noticed when the slideshow was brought up that one of the reasoning for the later end time and the later start time for the high school was for mental health reasons. And I just had something to say on that, because especially right now out in it's dark. It gets really dark really early. And I know that when I wake up in the morning, if it were a later start time, when I wake up in the morning, my parents are already at work. My brother is already at school because he goes to a different school. And then when I get home, I do sports after school, and it'd be late then. Then I'd have to go home, kind of like what Autumn was saying. I'd have to go home, do my homework, either make dinner or eat dinner, shower, and then essentially go to bed before having to do the same thing in the morning. With the start time right now, and with the earlier start time, earlier end time, I can wake up and then go to school, do my sports. It's still light out, so I can still do things after school, and then go home, do my homework, and then I have time to decompress at the end of the night. And when it gets dark, it gets really isolating for a lot of people. And so if it's getting darker earlier and school's ending earlier, people will just wake up, they won't have anybody, they'll go to school, they'll get home, they'll fill their whole entire evening with things, and then they just have to go to bed. So it's there's not really any time to do things socially or with your family, because you wake up, your family's already gone, you get home, you have to do your homework, you have to do all these things that are mandatory, and then you have to go to bed. You don't really have any time to do anything for yourself or with others, which is hurtful to the mental health, I'd say. That's all.
Thank you. Just 3 minutes, Barbara.
Yes, I got it. Thank you. Today.
I think saying something.
Today. Hi, Barbara Ryan, 14 Irving Place. First, want to thank you again for hosting. Public service sometimes calls for these type of hard calls and meeting, maybe not at the most opportune times, but having been a public servant and serving in many capacities, I appreciate y'all making this happen tonight. Want to thank all of our leadership here, all your thoughtfulness, and I was driving from the middle of the New York State, that's why I was online and now I made it here, but I really appreciated all the efforts and the collaboration for your presentation and what seems so reasonable for all. And the democratic process, and even at this level, can feel like a soup sandwich. So I thank you, Michelle. It really was a lot of, I was a public attendee, not a committee member, and there was a lot of conversation, and it felt sometimes circular, but yet it has led us to here, and hopefully a decision that will serve the majority. I appreciate the students' input. Certainly, my bias towards start times for teens and tweens and the larks of, pre-K through 5th grade. I think it's crucial to respect the community that came together and voted for an override for this to be possible and for a ratified contract. I'm going to try to find a way to understand the negotiation process from a public citizen standpoint when it comes between school committee and HFT. That's a big interest to me, because that seems to be more behind closed doors, and maybe that's the way it's supposed to be. But I'd like to see how we could make that a little more transparent for us community members and taxpayers, how negotiations with the HFT and the school committee happen. My last point is the bell versus block schedule, a little segue to a different topic. Thank you, Mr. List, for taking such a methodical process and getting so much information from a lot of different people. I know the equity audit exists. I do know that from the presentations I've heard, there are opportunities to increase learning time. What does that mean, the 15 minutes, and what does a bell versus a block schedule mean? I think that's critical to understand. And I think we're here together to make sure our future, meaning our children and our students, get the best that they deserve. So thank you for letting me speak, and I wish you all the best with your decision. Thank you.
All right, Ann.
Hi, I'm Ben here. Ann Pannoni, 1135 Highland Street. A teacher, parent, and I also was on the committee. And Michelle, thank you, Michelle, for everything. Oh, you're over there. You keep moving around. I can't see you. Thank you, Michelle, for everything that that you said. I do have something written down, but I'm going to try to paraphrase because she said a lot of the things that I was concerned with, and plus my computer may die. So I was watching the committee. I was watching the school committee meeting a couple weeks ago, and when I heard Dr. Cusker say that, first of all, I want to go on record saying I thank you all. I'm excited that if this can happen, I just wished we didn't spend all those hours in that committee, and had we known about this information, we wouldn't have spent 10+ hours meeting, taken away from family, taken away from schoolwork. So, but I really appreciate it. I was in those meetings with you guys way back when Dr. Jackson was there. We were trying to figure out how we could get the schools to go together. It kept saying we can't get the Miller and Elementary School to go together. Every meeting we were at, we would say, can we get Miller and Elementary? Can we get, it came up so many times, and it was like, no, we can't. No, we can't. No, we can't. So I want the community at large to know that we did have those discussions. And I was saying before, right before we voted, one of the gentlemen, I think he also said he had done a drone thing, that he had run over with a drone.
No, he wanted to, I think.
He wanted to. And he just couldn't understand why we couldn't get the two schools to go together. Right before we voted, he asked, like minutes before we voted, he said, are you sure there's no way we can get Miller and Placentino to go together? I'm like, no, we can't. And we brought up things like, well, why can't we do this? Like Hopkinton does it, these other towns do it. It's like, well, they have different roads than us, they have all these other things. So I just feel like the process was not a good process. And I do think that, I'm very excited that it's going to happen. But I do think we need to learn from this, and I think we have to think about the fact that the information should have been brought to the committee sooner than it was. And I know there's different reasons why it wasn't, but Dan, on your email to the community, you said that after the override vote, you guys started these conversations, Keith and the principals started having these conversations. So at least having that information, I just feel like that was just so much wasted time, and like it was energy, and it was tough, and there was so much emotions, and we just didn't have all the facts. So I just think we have to learn from this and really think about why we form these committees, and is it important, like should we have even formed this committee, I guess is the question. Because I don't know that any of the recommendations we brought forward are even going to matter at this point if we're able to do that, except that we want to leave by a certain time. So I think that has to be taken into account, and like Michelle said, why wasn't, there should have maybe been at least an elementary school principal on the committee, a high school or a middle school principal on that committee as a conduit. Like we as staff members brought information back, but there wasn't a conduit. And I think, am I up? Okay. Thank you. I just want to say one more quick thing. I hope that, no, but I do hope that if you do have an open forum, that it's not Zoom, that it's an open forum, because I think the community should have the opportunity to express how they're feeling about it. I really think that that's important. Thank you.
I just want to be clear, though. I don't think that the time you guys put into this advisory committee was a waste at all. I mean, first of all, what you guys were working on, which was separate from what the principals sort of had we're trying to work through. Had they gone to Chief Cassidy and he said, nope, that's still, you're too close to the fire lane or whatever, and he said, no, that's done. I mean, it's over, and then we need to have another plan. So, and had we come to you and said, hey, they're working on this, that may have changed the way that you were thinking, and maybe you didn't try to make some hard decisions. So it wasn't like anyone was trying to mislead, but at the same time, it wasn't possible until all of a sudden it was, and it was after the committee voted to make its recommendation. So it's tough, and I can understand the frustration, but when a ton of different things are happening at once, it can sometimes get a little jumbled. But I think that what the committee did was very, very important. So please don't think that you wasted your time.
I respect that, but we did ask if we could ask the fire and safety. We asked if we could do those things, and we were told no. So it's, yeah, I'm going to stop there.
Yes. So that.
Can I just need Michelle to speak on my behalf?
Sure. As I said, the turkey dinner's not coming until 9.
This is great. I'm Michelle Hastings speaking for Tanya Payne, the bus driver for number 12. And she has a couple of concerns about how some things are going to work. She's concerned about van number 97 and 95, which I believe are the vans or buses that we use to transport some of our special education students, with their limited seating and the combining of the, I'm assuming for Miller and Placentino, correct? Combining Miller and Placentino, not being able to have too many students, also because the dynamics change significantly depending on the students that are involved. And the other concern being the shortage of bus drivers, going from, already having the shortage of bus drivers with 12 buses, never mind increasing it to 17 buses, and the concerns about also having the concern about getting the additional bus drivers for that. Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you. Do you just want to speak to that real quick?
Yeah, I mean, the traditional or the way we've operated buses for 15, 18 years now is we've had 15 buses, for the high school, middle school run. So we've been able to call up 15, or homes have been able to call up 15 drivers. I've spoken with Tim often this fall about where we'd end up. When we were talking about having to get up into close to 20 buses, he was not optimistic. When we're talking now about 17 buses, he was optimistic. And ultimately, while we've struggled this year, he's hopeful and has a plan. The sooner we have a plan for him, the sooner he can try to execute that plan. So. And again, Tanya, you mentioned special ed piece. We are fully aware of that the number of special ed vans will have to increase. We know that. How we do that, whether it be through buses or the Dodge Caravans with 7D licenses. I mean, those discussions are happening as well. Please know that that's not, you saying that is not news to us. So.
Shortage, I don't just mean this one company.
Oh, no, absolutely. No. This is an industry-wide shortage. There's no question about it. I mean, Tim and I have had some discussions about recruiting tactics and things of that nature. So, no, Tim and I speak probably, I won't say every week, but pretty close. So.
And we've been more fortunate than some of the surrounding districts, too, even though we still have had our challenges.
Is there anyone on Zoom who wishes to speak? Okay. We did have one submission from a resident to be read out loud, and Frank volunteered to read that. You have 3 minutes.
3 minutes. All right. Stacy Raffi.
Wait. I forgot about.
We're getting started.
Can you speak up, please?
Yep, I will.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ready.
All right, Stacy Raffi, 20 Arthur Street. Good evening. I'd like to request that the school committee address the following questions regarding the 2 clauses in the recent MOA/contract with the HFT. What is the school committee doing to support the administration to ensure their success in implementing any changes to the high school schedule? Specifically, how are you advocating for all students, underlined all, at the high school with respect to high school schedule? The district recently performed an equity audit, which was supported by the school committee and administration. Based on that audit, there was a strong push to look at making changes to the current high school block schedule, as there are inequities for students in band and chorus and some of the special education students. As a member of the school council for the high school, I have attended multiple meetings with Mr. List over the last year in which he was very transparent, sharing his thoughts and plans on how to look at adjusting the high school schedule. He specifically wanted to solicit teacher and student input, wanted to put forth recommendations for the community, and provide feedback on and then plan to present his final recommendation to you, the school committee. From there, the school committee could then reasonably bargain any impact of the schedule adjustment with the HFT. However, instead of allowing Mr. List to proceed in this careful and measured way, you tied him to a process bound by a contract with a condensed timeline that may or may not be feasible, and then you remind him at every one of your meetings that January 1st is fast approaching. What is the school committee currently doing to support and ensure that the school schedule subcommittee is working towards the best interest of students, and how will the school committee work to help the administration come together with HFT to achieve their goals? In regards to the start times bus schedules, I've watched and listened to all of the committee meetings. As a former school committee member who sat on a previous committee and did the actual research on the science of teens and sleep as it relates to their well-being and success in school, I want to clarify an informed point of why the subcommittee recommended and the school committee in fact voted twice to implement the high school start time we currently have. Science does not just indicate that students need more sleep. Science and the related research indicates that teenagers need more of the REM sleep that occurs a few hours into their sleep cycle. I recently heard adults say we need to compromise and move the high school back to 7:45. In fact, in 2001 we did compromise and settled on 8:10. At the time, we felt it was a reasonable compromise to the 8:30 or later start time recommended by experts. Based on the science and research, all of which is available to the current committee, I strongly encourage to not start the high school and/or RAMs prior to 8 a.m. for the sake of the well-being of our growing teenagers. I strongly encourage and request you did not vote for a high school or middle school start time prior to 8 a.m. You have the research and data from other districts to show that 8 a.m. or 8:15 start time is completely reasonable to accommodate after-school activities, athletics, and job schedules. What did I come in at?
2:30.
Good job.
All right.
That's what we could do.
Breathe.
I know.
Bring out you what you read.
I'll send it to you. All right.
Can I ask questions?
You want to make public comment?
Are we still doing public comment?
I was going to give one last chance if
Oh,
there was
all right.
anybody who wished to speak but didn't. Okay. So now we'll bring it back into the committee, and yes, Cynthia.
Thank you. So, hi. So we, Mr. Keim and Dr. Slaney, 5+ years ago, we went through this whole process where we surveyed the community, all constituencies, students, parents, teachers, anybody that was part of the school district, we surveyed them. The preferred schedule that we wanted to implement at that time was to combine Miller and Placentino together and keep Rams and the high school together. And that's what we moved forward with. And then all of these obstacles came in our way. Unified Arts. We had too many kids. There was 1,500 kids at that time. There are substantially less kids in both of those schools at this point, just because of, people aren't having as many kids. That's just a fact. And so there's a lot of and through COVID, you learned a lot, like you talked about how the bus dismissal and drop-off has changed substantially, significantly. We had multiple conversations with Chief Cassidy about the safety of using different access roads, and that prevented any movement, us moving forward with that plan 5 years ago, which was why we came up with our compromise solution, which I will give kudos to Mr. Keim, because he's the one that came forward and said, I hope that's okay, and he came forward and said, you should have us go first. It makes more sense in terms of all of the things that we've talked about students, the younger students starting earlier, made sense. And so, kudos to Mr. Keim for coming forward with that compromise solution, and that's what we've been doing for the last many years. So I really strongly encourage the committee and the community to listen to our administrators and what they are advising us to do. This is their area of expertise, and we should be focusing on what they have to say about it. And so I think that the proposal that we have in front of us is a good one. Now, can we tweak it a little bit? Possibly, hopefully. Yes, I hope that that's possible for us to tweak it, to make things a little bit later, maybe, for the Placentino Miller kids. And I want to respect the students that do have after-school opportunities and have jobs and other commitments. And I think that we're able to achieve that just with making some adjustments. I think that we should do that, but we need to listen. Okay, thank you.
I need to
I'll get off my
understand though,
bandstand.
because if you move 7:30 later, you understand that
Yeah.
the high school would then get out 3:15, 3:30 later. If you move one, you have to move the other, correct?
Well, possibly. I mean, I think it depends on how we combine the bus routes and how we, right now we're factoring it like 55 minutes.
No, in the afternoon, you're factoring 40 minutes? Is that
Yeah,
correct?
it's the resultant of how it moves, so it's.
But the morning is still 55, right?
Right, right.
Okay.
So,
But
look, I think that for 4 years plus, we have heard significant continued concerns from parents about the Miller start time, especially when the bus pickups have been. And I will say, I was one who in 2019 sat in the audience when the school committee did an open forum and thought that this was ridiculous. People would figure it out and lives would adjust and it would make it work. And then COVID happened and everyone's life was blown up, and so it was the perfect opportunity to do it. And yet, time after time, I continue to hear from people saying that this is just not working and that having these students picked up in the dark with all the issues surrounding that is not working for families. And now the proposal is to essentially double the number of kids, including adding significantly younger kids to that population. I will not vote for anything that is a start time of 7:30. So, and I'm not even sure that I think that doubling the number of students our youngest students starting earlier is the best option. So, I get the sleep study, but and the sleep impact, but you're even hearing from the students themselves saying, I'd rather get up earlier so that I can do more stuff in the afternoon. I think I have not done all the reading on the sleep studies, but from my understanding is that the real benefits came from significantly delayed starts. 9:30, much later than we're even coming close to contemplating.
The recommendation is 8:30 or later. So what is your suggestion, that we go back to 7:30 for the?
No, I said I'm not in favor of a 7:30 start time.
Okay.
So are we, I think we're in alignment, though. We want the elementaries to go together, and we want Rams and high school. It just depends who's going first versus second.
I think that the elementary schools going together would be ideal. I think that we need to play that out and see if where we get to on the other end is something that we like, and if we and then also seek community feedback and have different things. But I'm not opposed to throwing out other alternatives quite yet completely, but I think I would like to go down this avenue to see if we can figure out a way to make this work.
So can I just say that one thing responding to the high school students, that was the reason why 7:30 was left as the possible start time for the early early elementary students, to keep the high school students at 8:10. Because right now, if we did nothing with the additional 15 minutes, they'd get out at 2:58. So we were, again, trying to address as many of the factors. Obviously, we can't address everything. We also were hearing what the concerns of the staff, Miller, in particular, about the 7:30 time. So at any time, Keith can adjust the model and show you what would happen if we adjust.
Well, maybe we should start doing it. But I will also say that 2:58 is currently the end time for the teacher day currently.
Correct.
Okay.
So that's the other piece of trying to least impact people.
I did have a question regarding the Placentino and Miller. One of the things that you had said was the earlier start times for our K through 5th students improve learning, help sustain attention. And Mr. Keim, you've lived this for 5 years. There was a teacher who's also a mom who said to me, and I said, we've gotten a lot of feedback. So I agree with Dan's point that we have gotten a lot of feedback from parents that 7:30 is too early, right? And that's really hard, that they're shoving food at their kid at 6:30, putting them on a bus, and that it's too early. But that teacher and mom said, and both things may be true, because it might feel too early at home, but we are getting kids that are alert, awake, ready to learn, doing well. And you've lived this for 5 years. One of the benefits that you're espousing as you make this argument is improved learning, sustained attention. Have you seen that from the time that we've shifted Miller from 8:10 to 7:30? Like, what is the perception there on whether kids are ready to learn at 7:30?
So when you look at our schedule, we've bumped our unit, and this is going to be a little bit of roundabout, so bear with me. We bump our unified arts to 8:25 so that teachers can actually have that instructional time from 7:30 to 8:25 before they go off to unified arts, because that is key instructional time, and the teachers want their students at that time. The later you go to unified arts, that instructional time in the morning is probably the best. You eat your lunch. I get tired after I eat my lunch, and you get into that. That's why we put in recess in the afternoon. That's why we've got Spanish that'll go in, and just movement breaks that happen. But the morning learning time is probably the strongest that we have. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it
That's what we heard from the Miller teachers as well.
Do we have, just like we have at the Tri-Valley High School, do we have the start and end times of other elementary schools in the area?
I don't think we have it for tonight, but we have access to it.
I have a question about the support services that are offered to the Placentino and Miller kids.
Yep.
Are they shared? Like, are the reading?
Unified Arts is shared, but our special ed teachers are building specific.
So there wouldn't be a conflict with tighter window where those. Okay.
No. But it actually, Sarah, it could potentially help as enrollment shifts have happened. It does maybe allow some flexibility with us, able to share some of our support staff as well, support each other for services.
And in terms of lunch minutes, I think this is a piece that people may be really concerned about. How long are you envisioning for lunches in order
30
to
minutes.
now share the same facility? So
Right
each
now-
class,
Right now, they're 30 minutes.
Each class would still get.
Yep.
Okay.
Mine come in in shifts. You know, I've got a 10:10 to 10:40. I've got some that come in from 10:15 to 10:45. I've got some that come in from 10:40 to 11:10. Another group that comes in at 10:45 to, and then I've got all of third grade that come in at 11:05 and get out at 11:35. Mine ends, clears out, and Placentino's then starts at 11:45.
And honestly, kids don't take that long to eat.
They
But
take like 15.
that is a contractual obligation of our teachers to have a 30-minute lunch. So we would keep a 30-minute lunch.
Okay, but now your kids won't be arriving close to 9, so they may have had breakfast as early as 6:15 or 6:20. So we'll still have kids eating as late as 12:30 or 1 o'clock, and if so, do we have a snack plan or a breakfast plan for those kids?
So we didn't say that would be our current.
Okay,
time.
it won't
That wouldn't be our current time. We would look at shifting that earlier. Yeah.
And I think we also want to encourage as many kids to take breakfast as free.
We'd be utilizing our space a little differently. So right now, Miller and Placentino have separate lunches. And we have many empty tables in our cafeteria. So we would just be looking at maximizing our space to be able to make sure that we condense the time of when they're eating. So they're not eating too early, but they're not eating too late.
Okay.
I think as we talk about the survey, hearing the high school students tonight was important, just to get their perspective. And I know the guiding principle, probably the top guiding principle, is to help our students, but that has a multiple different layers to it. Obviously, the feedback tonight has been pretty unanimous in terms of later start times will impact a number of different opportunities. I think we should make that broader and understand, like, what is the actual impact based on a survey of some sort.
We usually do that. I think it's a separate survey from what
Yeah.
we've been thinking
No,
about.
it would be.
My only other concern, obviously, is that you will have a certain group of students who will be overrepresented.
I think any survey, though, may...
No, I just mean, like, the older you get, the more likely.
Yep.
And I don't want to forget the voice of our younger kids who might not be able to come and speak as well.
Yeah. That's what I was-
If when they get off a bus now, it's pitch black. So we worry about kids getting on the bus in the morning. You have to remember Placentino students are the only students who come back at the end of a run. So if a parent is not at that stop, they come back. As it is, I still have parents sometimes picking up at 5 o'clock as it is right now from the time that they come. So I don't want us to underestimate. I think it's all voices we need to think, and there's going to have to be a balance between it.
I appreciate the feedback we've received so far today via email from the school investor committee. I think the survey is going to be really important to our students and our family and our faculty as well, because as we think about the adjustments that you alluded to, Cynthia, like this is a solid plan, but are there some blind spots, some things that we're not considering that might help us make some adjustments where needed?
I thought it was a really good point, too, about the late bus, and as we push the high school back, and we do want our kids to be part of clubs and activities, we also don't want to drop, the difference, Placentino kids do have to have a parent at their bus stop, but when we drop off that 11 or 12-year-old from the late bus, they might walk a mile or a mile and a half, and if we push the time back, it could be dark, or is likely dark. How would that work with our Placentino kids if we've only allotted for 40 minutes run in the afternoon, and you have children who don't have someone at the bus stop, but now you've got to get that bus back to pick up Rams and the high school? Is that happen often? And is that going to then throw your bus schedule off?
The bus has to come back anyway, somewhat. Would it make the bus possibly later for pickup at the high school we have planned for first? No, the afternoon it's middle first. But either way, it's been difficult. Jamie can talk to this. It's been difficult when buses have a longer run because the children at the elementary need more supervision, direct supervision. So if a bus was later at the high school or the middle school, the children could manage themselves better. And the fact that when you talk late buses, we'll always have a model. We can always have a model with a late bus. It's when can the late bus get there? And if we have the bigger bus run first with bigger number of buses, it means the late bus will get there earlier. If it's the flip of that, the late bus will be there later. Because again, it's busy doing regular runs. So
I think we're also, unfortunately, I think because of some of the driver shortage that we have, we're running a late bus later than we historically have this year, and are managing about a 4 o'clock late bus time. I think Ms. Manning can expand upon that, but we're running a historically later time than we do right now, which I think would be. The current late bus time would be pretty consistent with what the late bus time would be for next year.
So can we just start by, can we see what happens if we move the start time to 7:45? And the other thing is, how confident are you that you can get the Adams and high school difference in start times of 5 minutes from where it is currently 10?
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I just want to point out, we reversed that to accommodate those extra minutes since the high school does run 10 minutes later already. That's why we reversed. Right now, it's 8:05, you're correct, and 8:10 at the high school. And that's why we put the 5 minutes on Adams, because that
was it 5 minutes? I thought it was 8 and 8:10.
It's 10 minutes difference in the school day at the high school.
So the start time is 10 minutes difference?
10 minutes right now, yes. Right now, Adams is 8:05, high school is 8:10. But in order to try to keep the minimum on the end time, we reversed and put just 5 minutes and put Adams
Rams
second.
Doesn't start at 8 right now.
8:05.
8:05.
I just dropped my kid off in here.
And that is also the point.
We're trying to not let you bury yourself.
I thought it was 8.
Well, that's good. Then you're on time, I guess, then.
So again, talking about some of the variables. So if we move the start to 7:45, okay. If, like I said before, if we only allotted, say, 10 minutes for breakfast time, so it would be 10 minutes before, right? That would push us to a 45-minute time here, and if we were able to do the runs, say, 5 minutes faster, through either some efficiencies, the bridge helps, or whatever, we're talking about having a 40-minute run time in the afternoon, which is right here. Oh, you're not seeing it. It's doing on my mouse. No, it's all fine. Yeah, it's all fine there. So that's a reasonable afternoon run time. So we're looking at, again, that the Placentino Miller would start at 7:45, end about 2:30, and 2:20, excuse me. The high school in Adams would then get pushed to 8:25 and 8:30 with a high school end time of 3:13 and 3:08. So.
Which would then make the high school the latest.
By a minute?
3 minutes.
3 minutes? Okay, yeah, I remember the numbers.
But the two that are to 3:10 are already the latest by a fair amount from everybody else. There's not.
But I think some of the question, though, when you look at the changes that are happening in Tri-Valley and in high schools in general that are coming, this type of change we're probably going to make as a district once, or certainly once in a near generation. Well, yeah, but this had an outside reason. You're not going to have that outside reason again. We're not going to add more start times. We're not going to be able to add 20 more buses to be able to put everybody at the same time or anything like that. So this is kind of like these one-time decisions. So if you don't make the decision in a fashion to make the high school start later now, the next time you're going to look at it, it's probably going to be 10 years from now, is what I'm saying.
Keith, what if we can change this enrollment trend? I mean, I feel like that is the goal, to be able to have increased enrollment like Hopkinton, or stable enrollment like it's was for many years.
The Hopkinton enrollment, though, is based on development, and Holliston does not have that much developable land or building projects going forward right now.
We're going in the wrong direction. We're not even staying.
No, exactly. And that, if throughout Massachusetts, there are appreciably less students. This is not a Holliston thing. This is a Massachusetts thing, because people are finding that between COVID and moving somewhere else and working remotely, then it's, I like it here. So even if they can't be remote, they're staying there. I have two good friends of mine who did that. They went to Colorado and liked to ski, and they haven't come back. It's just, from that, what I worry about is that in the scenario with the high school, and if we're thinking about athletics being an important part, we certainly want to be first to the dance, because then you're alone. But I don't think you want to be last to the dance either, because you dismiss at 2 o'clock and everybody else is playing sports at 3:30 or 4 o'clock. There's a gap there that, we're not going to be able to fill with anything, productive possibly.
Yeah,
So
I think to Keith's point, if you put the high school back early, and other districts are now starting their sports later to accommodate these other later schedules, our students would not only be still tireder, they'd also have to hang around and not use that time wisely before they go to sports. So it's 6 of one, half a dozen.
And also just exploring, is the shift of schools, secondary schools, to later times a trend that will continue? And that I wouldn't want to be in a scenario where the predominance of the Tri-Valley is at later times and we are the earlier at that point.
Well, even if they went first, then we're talking about half an hour difference. So they'd either be out 2:45 like they are 2:43 now, or 3:13. So it's not like we have a 2 o'clock option. I mean, it's...
Well, you would if you had high school in Adams first. You would be much closer.
If we started high school in Adams at 7:45, when would they get it out? If we flipped it, basically.
I quickly built a model for that, too, now. You would be out at 2:33.
Okay. I mean, that...
So later than Hopkinton.
Would it be 2:38?
No,
33, 45 minutes. He said 7:45.
Yeah, if they started at 7:45.
Right, that's something because you have
6:48.
But you have a 6:38 Miller, which is getting you out at 2:28, and you're adding 10 minutes. Why wouldn't that be 2:38? Oh, sorry, that's where the buses depart. Never mind.
Yeah.
You're putting too many numbers on this.
Wow, since the numbers guy.
Yeah, but it's not how I would arrange it.
Oh, you're wrong then.
That color code.
I think we need to stick with keeping the elementary school going first.
Yeah.
And if there's a way that we can tweak it so that they can go at 7:35 or maybe 7:40, then I think we should try to do that. But I think the farther we get past, 3:08, 3:13, I mean, I feel like that 3:08 still keeps us within the realm if we do that for the Adams and high school to end. Just take 5 minutes off.
Well, I guess before we go too far down the path of times, I think it'd be great for us in the administration to know that you support high school and Adams staying together and Placentino and Miller going together, just because there was a committee recommendation that didn't recommend that. I had a recommendation back from May. I'm just saying structure is important.
Right.
I think I agree that structure is important, but I also.
I'm not saying who's first and second.
Right.
Just, I'm doing the first piece of the structure.
I think, given the fact that we first heard about this on November 14th, and that I'm committed to hearing feedback from the community and the impact on students and staff at all levels, I mean, I'm not ready to make a decision tonight. And I think that, to the students' point of surveying families, so hopefully families can speak for our younger students, and hearing more from our high school students about the impact, I think all of those pieces are important in determining first and second. I hear you on the whether they go together.
Well, because for me, and trying to build some semblance of roots, like I said, I've gotten for high school, middle, Placentino and Miller, I've put every kid on a bus now. Every student's on a bus that has one this year. Again, I've got to tweak some more things and move routes around and add buses to the run and things like that, just to see how workable it is. But if I have that piece of the structure, I can at least build that. And do you know what I'm saying? Because it takes a while to build. I mean, we're talking like a week of solid work.
So are you saying there's uncertainty as to the 40 minutes in the afternoon? That you might come back to us and say, oh, wait, it's 55 minutes, and now your 3:05 end time for the high school is now 3:20. Are you telling me there's uncertainty on the 40-minute to 55-minute?
I'm saying that what I need to do is build the roots build from the start of the day, not the end of the day. The end of the day will, like I say, fix itself. You'll adjust the start based on whether the end can happen. So if the start times that I understand the commitment the committee made, if it's that we want to pick up children at least 10 minutes later, say in the morning, it's just some round number. By being able to build the routes to start with, I would be able to see whether or not, because the high school, middle school, if they're together, that's already built. That's what we have now. So there's no, that time is booked, so to speak. The elementary's run is not. So I've got to kind of lay it all out, put it all out, have the system do their assumptions, and see kind of what that time is. I'm assuming it's about a 55-minute run. And it may be less. It may be 50 minutes. It may be 48. It may be. I'm just, and again, and I know and I understand the commitment. I do.
But you got 40 minutes built in there to get you.
I got 40 minutes at the end of the day. The end of the day is a shorter run because of the traffic situation. The morning is longer because of traffic.
But just also add that, like, as Keith was saying, just to kind of add to that point, is our secondary busing is built and we have a better understanding of the length of that time. So I would conservatively or cautiously be optimistic about the 40 minutes on there because we know what those runs are.
No, but the 40 minutes, we're talking about the 40 minutes of Miller Placentino because that's what gets you to the Adams High School entrance.
Right. I got to start building. That's what I'm saying. And I'm making assumptions. And when the high school dismisses doesn't necessarily mean when the buses arrive. That's always been the case.
Okay.
No, that's always been the case.
So I guess what Keith wants is to know if we think that the path forward is more likely than not going to be to put Placentino Miller together and keep the high school and Rams together, rather than going to some other alternative solutions, what the committee recommended, or the high school Placentino together versus.
And it allows me to move certain things forward.
I'll be honest, everyone has spoke, hearing it, where no one has talked against the grouping.
Right.
It's like who's starting first that the feedback is related to.
And that committee kept asking about that pairing, and we kept saying that pairing doesn't exist, so we kept having to ignore it. I think entering it back in, if we asked those same people, they would have supported this.
I agree.
This group.
Everyone was nodding their head, and there was
Am I
no
wrong,
one.
Michelle? Thank you.
I think we talked about it at
The
least
issue
3
is
times.
locks you into being able to play around with different groupings which could solve different problems if, for instance, if we don't like this because it ends too late, because again, if that 40 minutes is 45 minutes, now you're talking about 3:18.
But why would you need to decouple the groupings? We're arguing now which grouping goes first or second.
Right.
Decoupling
We don't
it
have
wouldn't
to.
solve it.
Because
If you're willing to couple Rams and high school and have them go first, which I feel like you've already
I'm not,
said you're
because that's the
not,
whole
so
point of what we're doing,
I don't
and
know we've
then
ever
what the
spoken
experts
about
that are sitting right in front of us just told us is not a good idea.
So,
and all of the research that we have done for years that tells us that's not a good idea.
Well, but you just heard from the high school students themselves. That's it.
We've heard from a few high school students, and they didn't say they didn't like. They said they didn't like 3:43 getting out, because that's what was presented, and that's not the time that we're looking at all.
There was a variety from them, but I think that that feeds into we need more information.
Yeah,
from
I
the
don't
community.
disagree, but I think that we can agree on we support the groupings as they've been presented.
In terms of couplings, I support them so long as we can get high school out by 3 o'clock.
Would be the 7:30 start time for Placentia and Miller.
Unless we are now running these bus routes and can come to us with more certainty that it will take 40 minutes or it will take 45 minutes in the morning and 40 minutes in the afternoon.
And I think that would be our hoped outcome, but initially, let's just say we play that out, we think we can get there. It's more likely than not that at the beginning of the year we would not be there, and then we would try to tighten that up. That's always the case, though. I mean, that's just maybe a new process, and just they gave you more than one option for how the cars might go, that might change. So this is sort of thinking that the 55 minutes would be the worst case scenario is what we believe, but with the hope that maybe we could reduce 5 or 10 minutes and get us tighter moving forward. I don't think that would happen initially, though, right? In any scenario.
We would have to make a determination whether or not we would take some risk with the time. Let's figure out whether we would take risk with the time that buses may be later to high school, middle school, if the elementary runs ran late, so we'd have to extend the time earlier to make sure they got done earlier, because it's not necessarily the time that the elementary starts, it's the time that the elementary delivers the students, so the buses can get back on the road.
Right.
So what I'm saying?
Change the dismissal so much as it changes when students might get home if they're taking the bus home, but a lot of them aren't going to be taking the bus home because they have other activities after school and work and other things.
That's
right?
If the afternoon run is not
Right.
as fast as we hope. So that would be, again, dismissal is not in the afternoon. This, again, just like in the morning,
No, I get
the
it.
time the bus gets there is not necessarily.
Right.
I mean, it's related to, but it's not dependent on the time the school starts. The time the school ends does not necessarily mean when the buses roll either.
Right. And I just want to be clear in terms of what you initially presented with the 3 o'clock time. I found the subcommittee's recommendations really helpful, and I understand the frustration and everything, all of how that transpired. But one of the things they said was the scheduling of schools should be thoughtful around student sleep, limit the impact on teacher retention, and limit the impact on after-school activities, not limited to sports clubs, extracurriculars, and after-school jobs. And I think that's really important, right? We got that from the committee and all of their work together as a recommendation, and I feel like we heard that resoundingly. One thing we haven't talked a ton about tonight, but I think is probably weighing on all of us, is also the impact on teacher retention. And we heard about the survey that was conducted in terms of the impact for teachers with getting out later, and I think we've all reviewed that as well. So I think that's where I'm coming from, where I'm in favor of a coupling, but I do think we need to minimize impact both on the activities but also on teacher retention and what the feedback they've given us on pushing past that 3 o'clock mark.
Yeah, so I think that's kind of what we were thinking of as well, and that's why we started with where we are now with the 7:30 for Miller, because if you look at the high school right now, the teachers at the high school get out at 2:58, and that's why we were leaving their end time at the exact same time. Miller would be the exact same end time. Placentia would be the one that is most impacted as far as having to change, and middle school would be very little impacted as well, with the additional 15 minutes that the teachers already were having to stay. So that was also a factor we considered. We were thinking of the teachers, the students, what we can manage, what the logistical barriers are, what we can finance, the bus number of drivers. So we tried to think of all of that, and that's why we came up with the plan that we recommended.
Concern with the teacher feedback is, in the committee, I was thinking through it in my head as well. If we want to start schools later, that means a school doesn't know, we don't really need to mention which one's going to end later. So, we heard the feedback loud and clear. We have a secondary job. I got to go take care of my kids. I mean, I've heard it all loud and clear. At the end of the day, if we want to push times later, there is a school that's going to be impacted by that. So I think we have to keep that in mind as well. So it all comes down to which school may be impacted if we go in that direction. I don't love 7:30 start time, but if that's where we need to compromise on to make everything else fall in place, I would be in favor of that.
With what schools start?
The elementary start first.
So doubling down the number of students that we have standing outside in the dark.
They're out in the dark for
you know,
how many days out of the winter?
They're also,
We actually did the
if
math
we
before.
push
I think
them
it's
later,
like
Dan,
18 days
they may
worth
be out in the
actually.
dark at night.
Okay, but now.
Right, it's worth
we-
at night,
now,
actually.
we have not heard from many, if any, Placentino teachers, but going to 7:30, you're talking about an 85-minute difference for them as well. So
I
you know,
agree.
We've heard from a lot of
should hear
teachers
from them.
about an hour difference is substantial for them. I think that this is maybe the first time that the community is hearing about a significant change in Placentino. Maybe moving earlier is easier. But people still. So we have to. I mean, unfortunately, this is going to significantly impact some group of people, and we're going to try to do our best to come up with the best solution that we think minimizes that. But I do not think that we can throw out the idea of starting Adams in the high school first.
Well, I do.
Okay, well.
So where should we go from here? Are we in favor of at least putting together a survey to get more data, but also with the understanding that we're running out of time on this, and we have, December 5th, maybe December 12th. We want to make sure we're getting feedback from people. Not everybody could make it this evening. Some people are just going to get up to speed, probably through a communication that will come out in the next few days. I'd be happy to be part of putting together a survey.
Taylor, do you think?
I'd like to as well. Yeah.
And Sarah, you're chair of comms, so maybe this makes sense. All right, communications, right? Yeah. But we need this quickly. And I guess the questions are going to be important, so is the context being put around it. And I guess we've now doubled the number of surveys we're doing tonight. So when do you think, should we try to, do you think it's feasible to put together a thoughtful survey to go out early next week?
Yes. Yes.
Open for about a week.
Open for about a week. I think at the same time, I think we should do something with December 5th. Whether we do a community forum in person, whether we do a webinar, we can discuss that. Do we want, if we won't have time obviously to meet to sort of approve the survey, so we'll kind of have to sort of empower that threesome to sort of make that final decision. Maybe they can share it with us, but we can't really deliberate on it. Do we want to limit the survey to these two pairings?
I think if you open it up more.
I think that we should vote on the pairings and say this is what we're going with, because that's the advice that we're being given. And then we can put it out, this is what we're recommending. Saying something open-ended isn't going to help us. We need to talk about the
No, I'm not saying
actual...
open-ended, but do we put the subcommittee's recommendation in there to get feedback, solicit feedback on that? Look, I get that we have recommendations, and I appreciate the recommendations.
Like, it's not the groupings, it's who's starting when, and by mixing and matching the schools doesn't solve any of the problems, it opens up new problems.
It just creates new problems.
It's a rock and a hard place, but no one has argued elementaries should go together, secondary should go together. It depends when they
And
start.
frankly, that was years ago, but when we did this process the first time around, that was the grouping that the community wanted. So that's why we went with that.
But you didn't have the money at the time.
We did not have the money at the time for the extra buses that it would require, but also it became a safety concern from Chief Cassidy as well as the administrators who said this is not going to work. We can't.
Correct, but now you're talking about the fact that the community just voted for to increase their taxes by $200,000 more, obviously in total, but $200,000 for additional buses.
Yeah.
With the explicit understanding that we were going to be starting later than 7:30, and now you're saying, to keep what I want, I'm going to
I don't know if it was
that out.
explicitly about moving the start times to 7:30. It was adjusting issues around the elementary.
No, it was
Both
explicit
parents
that we were gonna start-
Were
we were gonna
concerned about
start-
the fact that they had a bigger gap between Placentino and Miller. Other people were paying for early childhood and aftercare. There was a more than
And we're
just
going to
that
resolve
one
that,
issue.
but we were very explicit that we would start school, all the schools later than 7:30.
This is compromise. I mean, compromise in all things. This is sort of where we're at. I mean, we can't have all of those things and have them all work. We're trying to do the best that we can, given the information that we have and the amount of money and time and buses that we can actually support. So, I mean, yes, I would like to see that we can tweak that. I hope that we can make that work, but I don't 100% know that it will. But I don't think that we abandon all of the other research that's been done about student sleep and the needs of the younger kids and the older kids for the sake of 10 minutes.
I think that we're putting a lot of emphasis, I mean, student sleep is, everyone's sleep is very important. We could all use more of it. There are tons of studies that say that adults don't get enough sleep.
That's absolutely true.
So
Our job is to take care of students.
I don't personally think that the 20 minutes is the biggest driver for this decision. And I mean, we're talking about mental health and how sleep impacts mental health. Being able to participate in the activities that you want to be able to participate in, get out during this time and have the opportunity to get outside, that also is part of mental health. So simply saying that we've got to start as late as possible because that's the only thing that drives mental health is...
I didn't say
well,
that we start as
I
late
apologize.
as possible.
I
This is
apologize.
all just compromise.
But saying that
if we were looking, if
correct.
it was my choice personally, I would say that students should be going at 8:30. Obviously, that's not something the community is looking for. So there's compromise. So the compromise is the kids get out at 3:10 at like the latest.
But if we started the high
and that
school at
helps us to-
7:45, that's still compromise. I mean, the high school is starting at 7:30. That's still 15
No, the high
minutes
school's
later.
not starting at 7:30. The high school.
No. The high school was starting at 7:30 before.
That was 5 years ago.
Right. So we're still moving from 5 years ago. We're now.
But that is not what these administrators just sat in front of us and said, what's best for students. What's best for students is for them to start earlier, for the younger students, when their circadian rhythms dictate that that's the best time for their learning. And for the older kids, it's better for their circadian rhythms to start slightly later. So I think we stick with the pairings and start with they go earlier. If we can tweak that to 5 minutes or 10 minutes, so it's 7:35 or 7:40 for them to go to school to help with that morning routine. But the reality is that darkness in the morning is for like 18 or 19 days because we shift our calendars and then it's that.
It's not just darkness.
And
it's the fact that
later in the day is a more dangerous time for those
it's not just
students.
that parents have also reported having difficulty getting their kids up even at that age. So I mean, it's not just the darkness that's driving this, and then it's also at the end of the day.
I don't disagree. I've had 3 kids that had to do 3 different bus times. I get it. It's hard, but and the compromise is what we need to
I
work
think
with.
opening up the groupings, though, will create too much complexity to the survey. The groupings are the groupings. We need to ask about the start times.
But the issue,
I agree with Frank.
the issue is that Cynthia's put out is that the only option is to listen to the principals and not to dismiss your
It's not
views
just
and
the
your
principals.
expertise.
Our Miller teachers came in and said that shifting their schedules was going to be a hardship for them.
And we have gotten at least as many emails from high school.
Right, for them to start later than
Good thing is
3:10, but we're not looking at doing it later than that.
Let's get the feedback, and then we'll have a discussion with the feedback.
Yeah, the high school teachers wanted to be, so we've got one group, so like, I don't mean to pit teachers against teachers, but we've got.
I'm not,
different
but at
groups
the
of
same
teachers.
time, we just heard from David List, who is our principal at the high school, who has spoken to the issue around athletics and said, as long as we're around that 3:10, as late as 3:10, that we should be okay.
That's the latest though, and
Yeah.
kids are still getting dismissed early. I know that kids are getting to games late, even at the 2:40 dismissal. But it's not, I'm not, 3:10 to me is like the all-out drop dead, like you couldn't possibly go later than that.
No, I wouldn't
And
advise us to go later than that.
I am not 100% comfortable with 3:10. I would like to see it 3 o'clock, 2:55, just a tiny bit earlier.
Well, with the elementary
Right, but with the
starting at
elementary
7:30.
starting, if we're trying to compromise between the elementary starting a
But
little
that's
bit.
why I'm not convinced that elementary should go first.
Sarah makes a good point, and through this override, we talked a lot about instruction minutes, right? I mean, that was something we talked to the community about what just 15 extra minutes means, and with the understanding that right now we have kids dismissed early for sports that have like 100 kids, 120 kids, multiple times through the year, and that's with a 2:43 dismissal time. So while we push this back, multiply the minutes, whether it's 20 minutes, 25 minutes, 30 extra minutes of being dismissed early by 100 kids or 120 kids on various times. I mean, and again, instructional minutes matter. We talked about that with the community through this override. So I hear Sarah on that concern with 3 o'clock, 2:55. I'm not really sold on these 3:10s or later, and those minutes are important.
One thing I'll tell you, I mean, and I hated when people did this, so I'm going to do it. But last year when my daughter was in 5th grade, getting her up and getting her to school at 7:30 was very difficult. I mean, things that had already, so to say that Miller, I mean, I think that probably Placentino is less so, because I think those kids are probably up earlier and raring to go. But had my daughter been able to sleep in longer, maybe her attention span would have been lasted longer throughout the day too. So I mean, that's why I think that the sleep really should not. I mean, it really should not be the driving factor in our decision that we're making.
I would like to see it be one of the factors, like the subcommittee recommended, right? Be thoughtful around student sleep, but also limit the impact on teacher retention and limit the impact on after-school activities and jobs, just like our students spoke of.
So I think I think we're building the survey, Hillary's for you right now. I think there's really two options, right?
I'll do it too quickly.
We have the groupings, and it's basically, we have approximate times, plus or minus a few minutes. That becomes the question.
Just hold on, sports real quick, just because I know it's a big piece. So the way sports are done, golf, no matter what time, we could finish at 1:30, and we might still have to dismiss early, because golf, we get the times from the courses. No... They choose.
The way the sun works, right?
Yeah, they choose. Like, we have no say in that. As when track happens, when there's indoor track, when there's events, those are going to be scheduled. Most of those have a huge amount of kids. There's a few times a year that happens. With the other sports, we're not seeing it, whether a student gets dismissed early. That's on the family. That's not like, we can get kids there. Really, as I said, like Sarah before, like that 3:10 is that that is sort of like the drop dead time for us when talking to Matt, looking at our traffic patterns into where we then start to possibly lose the availability of like freshmen and JV sports. That's when it starts to get iffy with those. That's looking at something like 2:58, like where we are now. Like that's our current. I mean, technically it's our current schedule for teachers. So it would, in reality, allow, if we were able to do something like that, allow us to have students get to the bus in time, get changed, get onto the buses, and make it to sporting events. And talking to Matt Baker and other ADs and schools. And so that's sort of where, I just wanted to throw that out there for the dismissals piece of it.
Thank you. I am just reiterate that the sub-varsity sports, I think, are hugely important too. So I would I would cringe to impact those.
No, and that's why I was saying, that's why I was honest about like that 3:10 being like that, like absolute, sort of cut off there. And that's where, when you look at like Medfield, Dover, Sherborne, it's the same thing, right? Like they know that as well. Because I know Medfield originally was looking at a 3:15 end time, and then that has been moved back more recently to 3:10.
Yeah, we'd rather not do 3:10.
And it's not just sports, because I feel like we've said that a lot, but we have at our high school, and I'm so thrilled that kids have as many opportunities as they have for clubs, things like Best Buddies, NHS, Environmental Club. When we get a lot of impact or input from teachers that by pushing this time, they're going to have to leave or they wouldn't be able to do those type of clubs or activities. I mean, if you don't have an advisor, they don't run, right? And that is something I'm worried about. In addition to sports, it's many clubs. And we see that at Rams as well. And I know that Miller has some opportunities, and Placentino, and Miller have extended day, but it doesn't impact them in quite the same way. So I am still, acutely concerned about the end time.
Do have any data to show that moving the high school start time back 40 minutes has improved student outcomes?
Or mental health.
Or mental health. I mean, I know COVID kind of threw everyone for a loop there, and it's a little difficult, but do we have any data to show that 40 minutes has actually done what the committee at the time was trying to achieve?
Yeah, I wasn't here when the initial surveys were done and where we were at that time, so I think, do we have data? I guess I'd have to ask, do we have data to show where we were then with mental health compared to now? And then how do we disaggregate the factors that also impacted, like you said, COVID? I mean, so many things have changed. So I personally don't feel like I could speak to that. I can only speak to the research that I've read. We've done a lot of studies on the research that's out there from multiple areas, not just in Holliston and good practice.
Yeah, I mean, I think you probably look back past some recent presentations that Jerry Alvernay and Mrs. Beatty have done, and then whether just drawing from that, whether you can draw conclusions from that to the past. I think there was some longitudinal data that was presented in that. We do pull from the Metro West Adolescent Health Survey, which is our kind of standardized health survey that you can look back to. I think in 2012 may have been when it started or whatever, and kind of pull from there, which is an every 2 years piece. And then you can look at like academic performance, middle school as well over the last 5 to 10 years and what trajectories those have been on as well.
Can we do something like, can we look at 2017 and 2018 versus 2022 and 2023, which were fairly, 2023 certainly was, not a COVID year. 2022, I guess, was kind of middling, but.
Yeah, so we could pull out, I would imagine we could put something together and pull out, longitudinally what those studies look like. So we definitely saw an uptick in the survey data that we had during COVID. So that's why we said we implemented the bus changes. I walked into that in COVID. And so many other factors, and at that point we couldn't disaggregate it at all. I do think we could look at pre-COVID data.
I think the challenge will be correlating that to sleep.
It's going to be very challenging to pull
We can
apart.
certainly look at the data for you.
It's one of the reasons why we weren't able to do the impact studies, because COVID kind of just threw everything off. So it was the intent, but.
You're saying sleep, and we don't have any information to actually support the fact that it's actually improved.
Well, I think it's difficult because it's not the only thing that the schools are doing to improve students' academics and social emotional. So it's hard to pull out just that as the factor.
And that's where I'm a doctor of education. I'm not a medical doctor. So we rely on evidence from doctors and nurse practitioners, and I mean, those are the people that have done all these research studies, and that's the studies that we've researched as a team as well, and really wanted to support the needs of our students.
One thing we haven't talked about, or did not get to yet, if we, high school and Rams go first, obviously 7:30 is out the door, so we're talking 7:45, 7:50-ish time frame possibly. Are we good with the elementary starting, 8:30, 8:45?
Well, that would still be 20, 25 minutes or before they start now.
Do we want to see what those numbers
I'm
are
just
so
saying.
we can have a
Yeah,
conversation?
no, I think we need to talk about both sides' impact.
Yeah, no, but what I'm saying is right now, Plaza Encino starts at 8:55. I have that one right? Okay. But, so if you start at 8:30, 8:35, and you're starting 20, 25 minutes early, you're going 10 minutes later, Plaza Encino 15 minutes later, right? You're still ending earlier than you are now.
For Placentino, not Miller.
No, not for Miller. Miller starts at 7:30.
Well, right, for Miller, but those schools would end earlier than Placentino does now.
But it would still be an hour earlier than
It's for the high school.
it is now.
Right, but what you're proposing is like 85 minutes earlier for Placentino.
That's correct.
I think that, and just to hear all sides of it, because I am hearing parents concerned putting their kids on the bus at 6:30. That's an issue. Athletics at the end of the day. So if we have a happy medium where high school and Rams go first sub 8 o'clock, the elementary school, at least Placentino with Miller, will start before they're starting now. Is that the happy medium for everyone?
Say it again.
No.
If we,
You're asking the question.
well, I mean,
Sorry, just say it again. I was
high school, middle school go together first.
Yep.
Sub 8 o'clock.
What time, I'm sorry?
So just put it 8 o'clock.
Sub 8 o'clock and 8 o'clock are very different.
Yeah.
8 o'clock.
Okay, all right,
I mean,
8
if that's
o'clock.
the big number we're battling.
Then that means that Placentino Miller don't start till 9. That's too late for them. Does not match with the time that's best for them.
Well, no, because we start.
No one's saying what's best.
No, because we start 7:30 and then 8:10 the high school starts.
I mean,
so that's 40 minutes only. So that's what I'm saying. If the high school starts at 8 with middle school, wouldn't elementary start 8:40? 8:45?
No.
5-minute run in the morning.
8:50.
Yeah.
8:50,
Okay.
right, yes.
So it's still 5 minutes earlier than Pleasantino's going now?
No, it would, well, the end time would be 5 and 8 minutes or so later than
They'll be getting out later, right?
They'll be getting out later.
Starts
Yeah.
later.
Yeah.
Be getting out later.
It would solve other problems. Obviously, I know that, the Miller teachers have expressed,
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, like, I don't know, I have a few years, but I gotta get to work. I don't like the idea of dropping off at 8:50. But I know other people are thinking through that as well. So, like, again, I think what we learned through the committee out of anything was, no matter what we do, we're impacting a group of people, probably in a sub.
So just hypothetically, Cynthia, what would your thought about this be?
About what specifically?
Well, I mean, you want to start the high school no later than 8 o'clock. This is starting the high school no later than 8 o'clock. The high school is getting out at approximately the same time that it does now.
Right, so my concern about that is just that starts Placentino and Miller late, which is not their optimal time.
It starts Placentino 5 minutes earlier than it does now.
Okay, but Miller is not.
So we're shifting Miller by 80 minutes, which is 5 minutes less than where your proposal is to shift Placentino earlier.
Yes.
So the impact is the same sort of minutes,
It's
different direction.
significant, but they're paired with Miller, which is what
They're paired
a
with
lot of
Miller.
parents wanted them to
But
do.
Cynthia, this one impacts the least number of schools, right? Actually, it makes Placentino better. High school's meeting and Adams is close to where we want it to be.
Right, but then-
Miller's the only one majorly
Yeah, and
impacted.
then the Miller teachers and students are going, yeah, it's a lot.
It's an impact for
That's
three
a
grades.
large, yeah, it's an impact for all three, for the
Yeah, but if
three
we talk
different
about the
grades.
other,
opposed to
the other
10.
path,
Correct.
there's, Placentino's
No, I don't think that's
impacted,
true.
High school's impacted.
I think to align with the current contract, there's going to be a change for every school, and each of these different proposals shows a bigger shift with one school versus the other. So I think we need to understand from the community which is the school that would be least effective or benefit the most from these different proposals.
Yeah.
So going back to our surveys and going back to the proposal that was shared by our administrators.
Are we going to get very specific in the survey with times like this? The pairings and the times?
I think we should.
I think we need to.
We need to share the different options
Right.
that are proposed and understand the impact.
I mean, this is a very different model than starting at, I mean, it's only 15, 20 minutes, but it's a very different look to it.
But that's why this becomes an option, and then what we were just looking at is another option. The two elementaries at 7:30, because we know the high school can't get out past 3:10, so 2:58 is going to have to be.
Right, but I'm saying we couldn't do this with Miller and Placentino starting first, go to 8 o'clock, right? Because that's just, would kill the high school. So there's three options.
We're kind of meeting in the middle.
Right, but there's sort of three options, if you will, right? There just happen to be two that are this structure, but 15, 20 minutes different.
I don't know why you need to do the third option. I know we were talking about
What's the
like.
third option?
The third option is 7:45.
Yeah,
Okay.
flipping.
Do the principals have feedback on this option that they want to share with us now?
Which option are we?
The one that's
Miller
before us,
Placentino.
can people at home see what option we're looking at? A start of day for Adams at 8:05, a start of day at the high school for 8 a.m., an end of day at Adams 2:43, end of day high school 2:48, start of day for Miller and Placentino 8:50, end of day Miller 3:28, end of day Placentino 3:25. Is there any feedback on this? I mean, we've met some of the goals of the pairings where you're on the same schedule.
Yep.
We've addressed the issues with trying to get the high school out by 3 o'clock for activities and after-school jobs. But what is some of the feedback on this pairing?
Well, it goes back to where Jamie says if the kids are dropped off and no parent is at home, then they're going to get brought back. And that extends the day till probably 5 o'clock or later. Because right now they get dropped off and they're coming back to school at 5 o'clock. So that's an issue at the end of the day. I mean, it gets dark right now. We all know 4 o'clock right now, or getting there, close to 4.
I think we'll have increased cars on campus because kids will not be getting home. Our latest runs, they'll be getting home at 4:30 because we're going to load the buses, get them out. I'm going to have kids falling asleep on buses, so, you know.
So it's 10 minutes later? A dismissal at 3:25 is 10 minutes
Well,
later?
it's not 3:25. I have to wait till Miller loads.
But to be fair, one of the
3:28, so they leave at 3:30. I mean, that's not the latest run, 50 minutes to an hour. I mean, our kids have after-school stuff too, right? Like, so they're taking gymnastics, they're going to baseball practice, they're doing all those things.
But they're not changing.
I already have people pick up early because of our dismissal time.
Okay.
I'm just saying that there is an impact on that too.
But by moving the high school earlier too, to Miller's point, I mean, one of the things that was talked about in 2019 when the last start time was going through was that not a lot, but there were at least some families that use their high school student for childcare. So by moving the high school before Miller as well, that would allow high school students to provide childcare for Miller students too.
I would love that to be a question, to be honest with you, because I actually
there's
see
not
more
that many that actually
Miller students are watching the Placentino students that, I'm just being honest, like that's most of the time, when the kids are coming back, it's because the Miller student didn't go out to get the Placentino student off the bus. So I haven't heard much about
So wait, can a
that.
Miller student get a Placentino student off the bus?
Technically, after kindergarten, a student can get off the bus. Our
So
school
just
committee,
kindergartners?
that is what our policy says.
And I think the other issue, no matter which time you do, it's either they can help watch kids in the morning or they can help watch them in the afternoon. There's always going to be a child care issue from all of us who've had kids. You either are dealing with child care before school or child care after school, you know?
What impact
parents
does
need to get
this
to work.
have on the late bus schedule too?
You're probably pushing the late bus at least another 15 or 20 minutes later than where it's now. Again, we can always have a late bus, it's just when.
It's just when.
Right, that would be a very late bus.
You know. The other thing too, just please, whenever you put the survey together, these times are ishy times, 8 o'clock, 8-ish. Well, no, I'm just saying, these times are approximate. Don't turn them into granite, because they won't.
Equally promises that these will be exactly the start times.
Someone's going to pull that way.
Before we vote, though.
To keep going with yours, I've got probably 60 staff members that would move to 85, 90 minutes later. I don't know how many of them have jobs afterwards, or you were talking about that later, that was a staff effect. Moving Placentino earlier isn't going to affect the Placentino's job offer before school. So if that's out there as a consideration, that is another consideration to have there, because there are staff who do have jobs
Tell me a
after.
little bit more about, I mean.
Retention part is something he's trying to talk.
No, but moving someone an hour and a half earlier.
They're not going to have a job before school.
But they may be providing child care.
I'm not.
So the feedback that I've asked my grade leaders to talk to the teachers, and this is not formal, so I'd love to see a survey and like to come forward with wonders. And I think the biggest thing is people need the gift of time. So if someone needed to change childcare or that piece, they would have 9 months to do so. So if we can't make this decision in August, that's really unfair to someone. So I think that for a change of any schedule, we need as much time as possible so people can figure out their lives.
Well, that's why we agreed to the January.
No, I know, but
Yeah.
you're saying the impact of it. To Mr. Keim's point, the later we go impacts, our teachers too. Like I've heard, like even the shift from, where were we, Keith, 3:15 to then 3:20, and now it would be 3:25. Our after-school meetings would run till 4:30. They have, we're impacting a lot of people, no matter what decision. To Frank's point, we're impacting everybody. So, I don't know if there's a perfect piece. Around the sleep studies, it's real research. It's not soft research. And I understand that there's a lot of variables in it. I just don't want to discount them.
And I think that middle school and high school, in this scenario, they're getting out 10 minutes earlier versus how much later your Miller Placentino staff would be.
But one of the other, and I'll keep my mouth shut after this, we started with the safety of the kids.
Yeah.
And so, whatever scenario you look at, we were concerned about our kids being on the bus with middle school and high school kids.
Right.
And so that was the ultimate conversation that we started 2 weeks ago. That goes to Frank's point that, that's what we're concerned about.
And this is not including that.
It is, but before you did not want to make the decision because you wanted to look at start times.
Mm-hmm.
Our real concern is our kids riding the buses with them that, put us on the same bus run and then figure it out. But don't keep going around that we want to figure out middle school out here, high school out here. Our concern is our kids being on the bus with the middle schooler and high schools.
You want us to give Keith an answer?
Yes.
No, I think to his point is like the reason we came the first time was around the recommendation of what was developmentally appropriate for kids. So if an option, I think Dan, you talked about an option of class, and I don't know, like not. I think there's been like thoughts of like different combinations of bus of like so if like I think if Miller went with Rams, if that was the same start time, that piece. It's a concern for us, just developmentally, of the kids on the bus at the same time.
Right, but there was a high school Placentino sharing a start time, but different buses.
Yep.
And then Miller and Rams.
Yeah, and I think that the concern was that you'd have to have more buses to do Placentino.
That's the most expensive option.
Miller, and getting
Because of separating
just
the-
more kids.
Well, we'd have to
We'd
limit
have to
high
have
school
20 buses.
enrollment on the buses. Like that.
Right,
We'd have to
we'd have to just kick kids.
So are we willing, I mean, I hate to
That
throw
sounds
anything out because depending on what the survey results come back, people may hate all of these. But for the sake of moving forward at this time, and if it blows up, then we just meet twice a week,
Pump the brakes maybe, and maybe consider something else.
The other alternative option with high school Placentino, Miller, and Rams together still is not developmentally appropriate. There's no combination of groupings other than Miller and Placentino together and Rams and high school. So now it comes down to when do they start?
Okay, so therefore, do we want to take a vote to sort of move forward with, Placentino, Miller at the same time, and the high school and Rams at the same time, and then survey the community to try to figure out what the best approximate start times for each grouping are?
I'm comfortable.
Yes,
But to lock something
I think
in,
we need to be specific about what times we're looking at.
Well, I think there are three
Options.
Three options.
Right. And then there's also nothing. That always has to be an option.
Nothing is not an option. Making no changes is not an option.
Okay.
Because if we name no changes,
It can be an
Then we
option.
need to give the money back for the buses, and we'll have people getting out.
Well, no change is still 10 to 15 minutes later.
Correct.
And then somebody's ending at 4 o'clock.
yeah,
Right.
no, we can't do that.
Right.
Right. Yes.
Which is not ideal.
Because we haven't made any
Which
other
we
changes.
agree, there's no way, yeah.
Right. So no changes is not an
I
option.
don't think no change is an option.
Yeah, don't even put it as,
No.
it's not enough.
I do want more certainty on those bus run times before we vote. And I think with what we just proposed, I think we should be able to run a bus model and get us more certainty on the
That's fine, but
minutes.
we need to get a survey.
Right,
We need to get him
yeah.
working on the
Yes.
buses. We're not voting on
Correct.
anything final. We're just
No.
voting to narrow down for now. We can even say at this moment, we're narrowing it down to this. And we're praying that the bus model works and
Well, we
that
need more than prayers, agreeing with
thoughts.
you, but I think we need to now, just knowing from the committee and how frustrating I've heard feedback, and I was there, too many options just drive too much confusion. Like, I think we've nailed down at least a guideline of like a not 7:30 and can't be past 3 for high school at least. Now, okay, we know that. We want to group these two together. Now, what can we play around with this, like we're doing right here? What are these options? You have the most egregious. You have the elementary start at 7:30, high school's out at 2:58, great. You have this option, and then if we want to put the third option where high school starts at 7:45, let's see what that looks like. Those are the options.
So you'd have to have them rank, maybe you'd have people.
Yeah, force rank, like which one you're most...
Isn't that what I said, the 3 options?
Sure, Dan. We'll
Yes.
Yes,
We should
but
do
I
the
think,
talking.
let's
Okay.
focus less on what we're debating here and more on the survey, because the survey's going to help guide us to a decision. It will not necessarily tell us a decision, but guide us there.
Right, but the survey, I think, we just want to, I mean, not that maybe everyone reads it, but I think there needs to be some sort of narrative that goes along with it,
Yep.
pros and cons to different,
I think
yeah, okay. All right, so are we ready to vote to narrow down the pairings?
Yes.
Okay. Being said, I will then entertain a motion that the committee's recommendation going forward is, at this time, is to pair the high school in Rams and Placentino and Miller.
Second.
Okay. Any further debate? All's in favor? That is unanimous. I anticipate that being the last unanimous vote we take on this matter. But maybe not. Who knows?
let's get the feedback and give time for
So
consideration.
can I ask a question of Mr. List, but while you're still here? Is any of what we're doing with this impacting the other important work that you're trying to do with scheduling or the, okay.
Okay, so then I think we should also just vote to empower Hillary, Sarah, and Dawn to put together and send out a survey to the community after Thanksgiving, but as soon as possible after that.
Well, I mean, nobody's going to pay attention to it if you try to send it out.
No,
They're not.
So,
work on this.
Yeah, of course, but like sending it out.
in terms of,
And also, I would just request that we look and maybe work with Dan McLeod, or if you guys have access to it. I don't want just a Google survey, which anyone can access, and the more we kind of tailor that only the people that the survey receive the survey are able to
One
respond to
response
it.
per recipient can't be forwarded. I mean, that's where it will get forwarded. People will abuse it. I've seen it, and we want true data to work off of. So we do need to figure out those parameters.
Survey monkey.
But I think let's figure out the survey. Like I think we can figure out
It's kind of a tall order.
parameters.
We had somebody that helped us do that. Do you know what I mean? Like that was when we did it before.
we'll have, I think that's important, but you also have families that have 3 different kids in 3
Anybody
different
wanna reach out
schools,
to
and it's
Belinda?
important to hear from them on that as well,
Yeah, but
right?
that's why
So do they get
if
one
that's
vote?
the case, though, that they need to factor that into the vote they pick, right? Versus having 3
There's
different
only one
votes.
solution for.
Right.
What's that?
There's one solution that, so even if the family has various considerations.
Right, it's only going to have, they're only going to vote for one solution that works
If
for
I have
them.
3 votes,
Yeah.
I'm going to pick all 3 then. call it.
Sure.
What works best.
What about the student piece?
I definitely think we need student, can it be the same survey? Or do we need to tailor it?
I think that choosing like what stakeholder you are.
Yeah.
You know, are you a
Are you a
could
student,
check
are you
more
a
than one,
parent, whatever.
But then you can aggregate
The question is
From
how
the
we distribute it to students.
From students, I know that it's a little harder, but I'd almost rather a few quantitative things and then a little bit more qualitative. So that would be, but you guys decide. The one thing was when we send out, when you ask Dan to send it out, just make sure he does not send it to that community list.
The one that people can subscribe
The one
to.
where non-parent guardians. It wasn't.
He just-
Good point.
Is it,
So it has to be just.
It's a separate list. He can
It's
not
just
check
the
it out.
HPS list.
Yeah, just the parent guardians and staff.
Can we send it out in our newsletters?
No, because the way we're looking at it, if you send it out, the DL will determine who can answer it. If you put it in a newsletter and someone can click it, you're going to get people to be able to respond multiple.
Everyone will receive it directly.
Yeah,
Will staff receive it?
Yes.
that's the problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
question, though, is
this will go to the entire.
the staff is receiving it?
Yes.
Yes.
Principals could email it.
I can email students though, right? Or it's still the same issue?
Well, if we add them to the approved list, they could answer it even.
What if it's a survey that's only open to the HPS community? for the students anyway, students and staff, right? Because then somebody from outside can't submit
If
it.
it's like a Google form, you can send it to.
Exactly.
And only one response.
And only one response, which you can set it to that.
No, how does that work for parents?
For parents, it's separate.
Just to the student.
Yeah.
For staff, you can do it to their Holliston email. For students, you can do it to the
All right, you guys figure it out.
Time frame is, are we looking for this data prior to the Thursday, December 12th meeting? So we'd like to close this probably by, what are we thinking?
That day.
No, I was thinking close it December 11th.
Yes.
In which case, working backwards, do we want to have this ready to roll by December 4th to give people a week? Does that seem reasonable?
Today's the 4th.
Or the,
What's that?
think it's gonna
or the 3rd.
We'll try for the yes, we will try for the 3rd, but the hard,
I'd like to, can we set the deadline to be the 10th so that we can do something with it before the 12th?
The people are
no,
gonna say
if we
they're
do the
gonna find
11th and close it on the
Give enough
11th.
time,
Meet
it's
on
the
the 12th.
holidays, and
Right.
how dare we?
So you'll look at it the 11th at night. Why couldn't it
So-
close at like 5 o'clock on the 11th?
Okay, just eyes wide open on this, like, this, we're getting to be a very busy time, and I think that folks may be frustrated that they're not given sufficient time to review the survey and be able to submit a survey, or ignore the survey, or don't know, because this happened before, and I'm just saying, like, we don't, I feel like we're rushing this entire process enough as it is, that I am worried about the backlash. We suffered it
what
before,
I will do,
so do we want to repeat the same mistake, or do we want to do something different?
I'm going to call with the International Clock and ask them to put some more days in between now and January 1st.
Well,
So I do think it's important, we send out the survey with the DL, but then also, let's blast the message, check your email for the survey, right? I think we can say that, we should say that.
I think a
Work at
week
that.
with a couple of reminders is ample opportunity to.
I think we should look at, the response rate. Right? I mean, if we don't get any responses, then what does this help, right? So we don't know until we know.
Right.
If we get a ton of responses and we feel sufficient on it, we'll close it when we say we closed it.
And I hear you, Cynthia, but that leaves us with one meeting on the 19th, and if we uncover something that
well, but
we haven't thought of
artificially
yet.
created this problem.
Right, but we still have to tackle it.
We created the problem.
No, no.
Yeah.
We didn't this was an agreement negotiated
I get it,
in good
but
faith
I
with
get
the
it.
HFT.
Yes.
I don't think we're saying we artificially created this problem.
Well,
we came to
we
a
organically
agreement.
created this
No, we came to an agreement that was
Yeah.
negotiated by both parties, and now we're living within the parameters
Okay.
of the
I just,
negotiation.
I'm given the fair warning, is what I'm saying, that I am concerned that folks are not going to be paying attention to all of this stuff going on, because even though it is what we live and breathe every day here as school committee members, we're in the minority. So I'm just saying, like,
Wait, you do work between meetings?
yes, damn. So I just am cautioning you that I feel like if we rush through this, we are going to suffer the consequences.
We are going to take as much time as we possibly
But yes,
can.
but possibly can is like,
Okay, well, Cynthia, what day? The 23rd, 24th,
So,
26th,
it's not
27th?
bad.
What days do you want to meet? I mean, like, you
But
know.
we don't know, we may get 1,000.
I hope we do.
Right?
I
So
hope
we
we
don't know
do.
until
I'm
we
just
know.
saying
The
that
goal is, let's get it
we
as
went through
early
this
as possible.
process
Let's set a
before.
date, and let's recognize that date may move based on the response.
Can we title the email, what are we going to do with the gas station downtown?
Nobody cares.
We get a communication
No, actually,
out
that-
about this
I do
meeting.
think the subject of the email is important.
In
if
your
people read
world,
it.
they care.
I'm
I don't care.
sorry, that was incredibly funny, and I just have to say that for the record.
This time around, we're going to get a communication out. You're going to likely blast it on Holliston Happy, Holliston Residents.
Well, except that those
right?
people won't actually be able to vote.
Yeah,
I know,
No,
we're going
yeah.
to make
have to
people
say
aware
who is
that the
eligible
survey is
to
coming.
I don't, Barbara, could we work potentially, I mean, it's not,
Dan is
really
gonna
it's not
check
political, right? Can we work
each
with the
response to
PTO
make
to help
sure
put it on
and
the PTO
counter, you know,
pages?
and check and make sure.
Okay, so we'll get it onto Facebook through all the different PTO pages and.
Not political, we're able to
Right.
we're about policy, but we're about communicating.
Okay.
So we can do that.
So check your email for this subject line about the gas station and answer the survey, right? That's what we need to say.
How many responses are considered sufficient?
I think we should just keep it open for the full.
No, we'll keep it open for the full, but I think when we get to the end, if we get 50 responses, why would we use that data? That's not really.
Well, just because you have 2,800 students, you have maybe not double that number of parents and guardians, but you have a significant number of parents and guardians, and then you have over 500 staff, so.
Would you agree in just the last 2 weeks, we've probably received at least a dozen emails? So survey is not the only method of communicating with us. People can certainly reach out by email, right? Because they may have more to say about this.
Sure.
And they are. I've received a few as we've sat here.
Yes.
Okay, so motion to empower Hillary, Sarah, and Don to create and send out a survey about the Gulf Station downtown.
So moved. What? Not about that part. Oh, I said so moved before that one.
On the survey.
Surveys.
So moved. Do a second.
Second.
I'm sorry, what? Yes.
We're voting on
Sorry,
whether
I
we're
was
resigning.
helping.
What?
I'm helping.
All those in favor about the survey?
Dan, you're killing me. Okay.
Okay. Now we need to move on to discuss what we would like to do as far as forum or webinar.
What?
In addition to the survey?
Yes.
We don't have answers yet, though.
Right.
Are you?
We can't do a webinar on, here's what people want to do.
I think to be fair.
Without having that. That's what I'm saying.
The survey,
This
we
is
should
all-
provide an open end to provide feedback as qualitative, so that's one way to get questions that we can go answer. If we get sufficient amount, we should probably concisely speak about the options, so through a webinar. I think community forum, when we have limited options, I don't know necessarily what a community forum will accomplish, other than doing one.
Well, it provides a good opportunity for the community to give you their feedback directly.
Yep.
And
We could do, I mean, we've done,
Right.
I think we said the community forum because we felt we didn't have a concrete option. Now I feel like we have 3 options. to
No, I
pick
still
from.
think we need a forum.
I hate to say this, but I agree with Cynthia.
Wow,
Are pigs flying around the room?
But a forum or a webinar, because there's 2 different, like,
Well, I'm open to. I mean, the forum or a webinar, but
I'm not doing it on my birthday, that's for sure.
what day is that?
I'm not even going to tell you. Because I'm going to be like, we're doing it on that day.
And then, but then, I mean, it does bring up. I mean, so we are running short on runway. We have a general, a regular school committee meeting on the 12th. We have to. Essentially, we're giving ourselves the 19th as a deadline to make a decision. Though I'm open to meeting the next week, especially that Wednesday. But no, seriously, I mean, like, when would we think it is appropriate to do that?
between the 12th and the 19th, I figured it'd have to be
Can we do the forum on the 12th?
in the meeting.
And then just move our regular meeting to the 19th?
What do we have for the? No, I don't want to move the regular meeting to the 19th.
Well,
we still have other business.
I know.
What do we have for the next meeting?
Let's meet
Do you have
every
it?
week.
Forum be like a set of an hour, like
Yeah, it could be an hour of the meeting.
6 or
We do a
6
forum
to 7
yeah.
for the forum, and then the school committee has
Yeah, what
has
Sarah
to meet
said.
at 7.
Budget part 2. Is that the only presentation?
At the moment, yes, because we won't have the schools, we won't have the math study group recommendations that we're meeting that night, so we probably come to the,
Could we do that on the 5th?
which, the budget?
The budget.
Next week?
No.
I don't think people are real.
No.
What else? Okay.
We are meeting for budget on December 2nd.
Right?
So why couldn't we do it on?
Keith
Because
says
they
no.
won't be ready.
It's numbered spreadsheets.
Yeah, they won't be ready.
Okay, we'll have a.
Can I ask a clarifying question? What is the forum? So before we were talking about a forum, I think he was talking about like what they thought about the 2 schools going together.
Now we're asking about the
And the impact of
times and the
times.
impact of the time.
Before you get the qualitative?
Well, no, I was saying we should wait till we get the data, but then have a forum to present what we,
Your findings.
yeah.
I think it's the community's really first hearing this tonight, and they might have a lot of questions. And while
Yeah.
our survey is, we're asking questions and they're giving us some feedback, they probably have a lot of questions, just like we peppered you with tonight. And we want to make sure people understand the impacts.
Well,
Should we send out
we could work on an FAQ.
Should we send out an email tomorrow, just briefly highlighting that something will be coming in to check their inboxes? I could just do it either from me, or we can do
If we're
it.
using the 12 to present the data, and that's the purpose of the form, why wouldn't we combine it?
Okay. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Why would we do it twice? To ourselves and then, but to ourselves, the community, and then to the community again.
Okay.
So then we have an ample time to digest what we've heard and what we've seen in the survey results to get to the 19th. And then probably the 26th.
Okay, so we will do a forum on the 12th. Do we want to start, when do we want to start at 6?
Yeah.
Okay. Before we lock that in, can the administration do a forum starting on the 12th, so the same day as the school committee meeting, but starting at 6?
A math study group till 5:30.
Yes.
So I guess we could.
That would require us, and then whenever we shoot up the survey, we have that time in between then and the 12th to pull all that data together.
Well, that's why I think that the 10th is a better time to end the survey, but...
But all this is for naught if we don't get the responses. So again, it all is going to be based on that.
We'll get the responses.
Okay, then. Remember, one response per email.
Probably one per family would be easy.
One per family, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess one email per.
They can't. They give different options. That doesn't make any sense.
You can't, I don't think that's possible, so it's going to be one per email address.
Do we have ideas for getting input from younger students?
Is that coming from their parents?
I know, but then
Yeah, it's just the way you're going to, I think it's just
Gonna
important
skew
how
it.
you weight it, right? Like, so you're going to have high school students and high school parents. It might be a double, like you're saying, it just might be doubly weighted in one way. So I think it's important to look at the weight of younger, that they're the representatives of their children as well. And think of that almost as double the vote as well. Does that make sense? Because if not, it's going to be, I mean, I'm hypothesizing that it might very heavily, if you just look at it in a quantitative way, be heavily weighted in one way when you don't have the voice of a young child where that's their parent is voicing it for
And
them.
we're going to have to figure out, because unfortunately, it's not like every parent has just a child in one school, right? So you've got...
Right, they're going to make what's best, they think, overall. Right.
No, I understand, but I'm just saying...
But we also, to your right, you had said, we need to split out the population. So like looking at what parents are thinking versus students. You can't really look at it collectively.
Right, versus staff.
Yeah,
And then
versus staff.
you're going to have three different, like, what story is the data telling you, right, Hillary? Like, what's our story?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, separately for that reason, even though you could change it on the form. Google is fine for the staff and for the students, I think, because you're going to only get the one input on that. You can set it that way.
It might not be a bad idea to do 3 different surveys. Like they're the same survey, sorry, but 3 distributions.
So you can easily, just easier.
And it's not self-select where it gets a little complicated.
All right, well, we'll leave that in the capable hands.
There you go. You got it, Hillary.
Do you want me to send out a brief email tomorrow?
No.
Just summarizing?
They're going to do it. You don't do brief.
I can do brief.
There's no brief with you.
500 words or less?
Let the communications subcommittee do it.
No, not with any detail. Well, we're not...
I think we should send an email probably. Tomorrow's hard with
I wanna see
holiday.
it before you send it out.
Send
That's too
kind of
long.
a warning email to say, hey, this is
Look at the
coming. Just
week.
be on the lookout.
Yeah.
Nobody has any more questions for the principals, right? We can let them,
Yes.
I mean, they've been
Thank
here
you.
for an extended time.
Apologies, yes.
I'm sorry, so I'm not going to give you more work.
Dan, our calendar invite had us late.
Till 8.
You have an edit button?
I told you, the turkey dinner's coming at 9.
I have a hard stop.
You have a hard time with what? We have executive session.
Yeah, I do too.
Okay, so then let's move on.
What, we have more?
No,
Oh, my God.
no, we don't have any. Technically, we had an update on the high school schedule change, but I don't think that there is. Did you want to just briefly discuss the Rams principal search?
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Barbara.
So I did send something out to staff just to let me know that this would be coming up, and I certainly think we can be a little flexible. We haven't set any exact timelines in place. My plan was that Joni Menard would co-facilitate it with a principal, and Mr. List is going to be the principal. We're going to look at the search that we did for Mr. List and also for, what was the other role? SPD. I'm sorry, when we had the student services director, and look at that process so that we could build in forms and community input and all of that and surveys. I will say I've already heard from some staff just asking me if they could be surveyed sooner than later, because they would like to be able to give their input I think for the right reasons. And I explained how if we do an open search, which is what I've been tasked to do, a full search would be, usually the surveys would happen when you narrow down the finalists. The group would interview, narrow down the finalists, then we would take those finalists and have them do some kind of community forum, and then potentially survey staff, survey the community at that point. But I'm open to suggestions on that if you would like to glean input from staff beforehand, if it's not going to change the outcome of going through the whole process, then you might want to wait to do the surveys. But if you would like to see some survey data from staff beforehand, that's something that we could consider as well.
I think it makes sense to wait just to ensure that we get the pool of applicants that we want. I think that the fact that we're doing a search is not a reflection on the job that Karen is doing. It's just that we're trying to sort of honor commitments to do sort of full searches, especially given timing and everything. You had to make a decision quickly without really any community input. So. It's just important that we go through that process, and it could very well be that it just smoothly moves along. But
yeah, I think no matter when we just opened it, and can certainly extend the timelines if we can feel like we had enough of a pool. I will say, when people perceive or perhaps know that there is a strong internal candidate, it also minimizes the people that apply, right? Many people just say, I don't want to go through that process, potentially become a finalist if not to say that the decision's been made, it hasn't, but people do know, and you'll hear that in things like MASC when they present on superintendent searches and such, when they know that it does often minimize the number of people that apply to begin with.
Can you talk a little bit about the process that you're going through to make sure there's a diverse pool of candidates? What are the organizations that HR is reaching out to or posting the position?
Yes, so for now, we had just put it on School Spring because we're trying to get through this whole, just get it up there. But we have done Indeed before. We don't get a lot of scrutiny with Indeed. Sometimes we paid for Globe advertisements, and that doesn't really get us. Honestly, School Spring, through our Power School platform, is really the best way, Unified Talent. We have tried other avenues, but we have not really seen the pool widen because of that. People seem to know that that is the go-to place, and that's where we get our best interest. Again, if we don't get a lot of candidates, we have sometimes sent it out to other places, but I haven't necessarily seen that change too much, even when we've done that.
Is there also a search committee?
Well, there would be an interview committee, yes. Okay. So once we get to the process of closing if we close up the applicants and bring them forward, we look at all their, usually what we do is try to narrow it down as an administrative team and say, these are the ones we would move forward for people to look at their resumes because they have the qualifications. And then we have the group narrow it down from there as to how many to interview at that point.
Karen is definitely interested in the role, right?
Very much so. And then the other piece is obviously we would also have to reopen, if Karen were the one that received the permanent position, we would then have to reopen in the assistant principal search. And similarly, we're not getting the number of applicants in these positions or in teaching positions like we had in the past. Less and less people are finding, the challenges of administrative positions, I think, are keeping our options lower. So the later you start those searches, whether it's a principal search or an assistant principal search, you are seeing candidates are less and less as it goes along.
You mean meetings at 8:30 at night, 2 days before Thanksgiving, or not? It's not a Something you look forward to?
Well, Dr. Jordan's been telling me how happy he is with all the nighttime meetings. So.
Right?
Well, you know.
I wanted to email to Don saying if we could do mornings.
It's, you know,
Like 6:30, right?
Yeah, I'll do 6:30 in the morning.
So the review committee would be similar to what we had for
Mr. List, yeah.
For Mr. List. It would be comprised of like
Yeah,
community members.
We always do, we try to have a couple of parents on there. We would want 1 or 2 students on there. I think middle school have a lot of voice in this process as well, just like our high school students. We would have, obviously central office, I would probably have another principal on there. Definitely have probably 2 or 3 teachers, maybe at least 3, I think. So I haven't looked at the old, I'm pulling those together, so once I look at what we did for Mr. List and for Just Beatty's search, we kind of got to stay in those guidelines because those both work very well.
okay.
You don't want to get more than like 10-ish is usually a decent number. You start getting into 12 or more, it gets a little bit much.
Okay. Anything else on that? We are not quite finalized. We thought we would be there for the EU contract, but still finalizing a couple of things, so we do not have that to go on. So our next meeting will be December 12th. We are not going to be meeting on December 5th, right? No one wants to meet on December 5th? Okay. So we do have executive session tonight. So I will entertain a motion to adjourn from open session into executive session, from which we will not return for the purpose of conducting strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares, as well as to comply with an act or under the authority of or any general or special law, federal grant in aid requirements.
So moved. Second.
Okay. This does require a roll call vote. Frank?
Yes.
Hillary?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Cynthia?
Yes.
Dawn?
Yes.
And I am a yes as well. We stand adjourned. I hope everyone has a happy Thanksgiving.